god. You're so awesome, Lawrence Lim.
It's Lawrence Lim with the W.
So a blonde lived with two blonde roommates. She bought a new car, and on the way home from the dealer got caught in a terrible hailstorm. Her brand new car was dented all over. When she got home, she called the service department to ask what she should do. They offered to send the car to a mechanic, but she'd have to pay for it. She tells them she has absolutely no money. Couldn't they just send someone anyway? The service chief, being a prankster, told her to wait till the car was cool and then blow hard on the tailpipe, which would pop out all the dents. A half hour later, her roomie saw her on her knees behind the car, blowing as hard as she could. They asked what the heck she was doing, and she told them, adding in a perplexed tone, "But it's not working." "You dummy," one of her blonde roommates said. "You have to roll up the windows first." So one evening, a man strolled into a lively bar, and his eyes were immediately drawn to a stunning woman leisurely sipping her drink. Feeling a surge of confidence, he approached her from behind and greeted her with a friendly, "Hi there, good looking, how's it going?" Unfazed by the boldness of his approach, the woman, who had already enjoyed a few potent beverages, turned around to face him. With an impish grin and a mischievous twinkle in her eye, she met his gaze head-on and quipped, "Listen, I screw anybody, anytime, anywhere, your place, front door, back door, it doesn't matter to me. I've been doing it ever since I got out of college. I just flat-ass love it." Eyes now wide with interest, he responded, "No kidding. I'm a lawyer too. What firm are you with?" So, Thomas is 32 years old, and he is still single. One day, a friend asked, "Why aren't you married? Can't you find a woman who will be a good wife?" Thomas replied, "Actually, I've found many women I wanted to marry. But when I bring them home to meet my parents, my mother doesn't like them." His friend thinks for a moment and says, "I've got the perfect solution. Just find a girl who's just like your mother." A few months later, they meet again, and his friend says, "Did you find the perfect girl? Did your mother like her?" With a frown on his face, Thomas answers, "Yes, I found the perfect girl. She was just like my mother. You were right. My mother liked her very much." The friend said, "Then what's the problem?" Thomas replied, "My father doesn't like her." So one Saturday morning, a guy gets up early, dresses quietly, gets his lunch made, puts on his long johns, grabs the dog, and goes to the garage to hook his boat and trailer to the truck. Coming out of his garage, rain is pouring down. It is like a torrential downpour. Snow is mixed in with the rain, and the wind is blowing 50 miles per hour. He comes back into the house and turns the TV to the Weather Channel. He finds it's going to be bad weather all day long, so he puts his boat back in the garage, quietly undresses and slips back into bed. There, he cuddles up to his wife's back, now with a different anticipation, and whispers, "The weather out there is terrible." To which she sleepily replies, "I know. Can you believe my stupid husband is out fishing in that stuff?" So a little boy desperately wanted $100 and prayed for 2 weeks, but nothing happened. So he decided to write a letter to the Lord requesting the $100. When the postal authorities received the letter addressed to the Lord, USA, they decided to forward it to the president. President Clinton was so impressed, touched, and amused that he instructed his secretary to send the little boy a $5 bill, thinking it would seem like a lot of money to a child. The boy was delighted with the $5 and sat down to write a thank you note to the Lord, which read, "Dear Lord, thank you very much for sending me the money. However, I noticed that for some reason you had to send it through Washington, D.C., and as usual, those jerks deducted $95. So upon hearing that her elderly grandfather had just passed away, Katie went straight to her grandparents' house to visit her 95-year-old grandmother and comfort her. When she asked how her grandfather had died, her grandmother replied, "He had a heart attack while we were making love on Sunday morning." Horrified, Katie told her grandmother that two people nearly 100 years old making love would surely be asking for trouble. "Oh no, my dear," replied Granny. "Many years ago, realizing our advanced age, we figured out the best time to do it was when the church bells would start to ring. It was just the right rhythm. Nice and slow and even. Nothing too strenuous. Simply in on the ding and out on the dong." She paused to wipe away a tear and continued, "He'd still be alive if the ice cream truck hadn't come along." So there's a space mission to the moon with 2 monkeys and a woman on board. Control calls. Monkey number 1 to the monitor. The monkey is instructed to release the pressure in compartment 1, increase the temperature in engine 4, and release oxygen to the reactors. The monkey does everything right away. A few moments later, Control calls again, Monkey 2 to the monitor. The second monkey is instructed to add carbon dioxide to room 4, stop the fuel injection to engine 3, add nitrogen to the fuel compartment, and analyze and transmit solar radiation readings. The monkey does as instructed. Few minutes later, Houston calls again. "Woman, please approach the screen." She sits down and immediately interrupts the dispatcher. I know. Feed the monkeys and don't touch anything." So a woman decided to divorce her husband and hired a lawyer who specialized in divorces. The lawyer asked her, "So what are your reasons for wanting to end the marriage?" She replied, "We're just too compatible." The lawyer looked confused. "Don't you mean incompatible?" She shook her head. "No, I mean compatible. I love going to the cinema, and he's a huge film buff too. I'm crazy about Indian food, and he loves a good curry. We both enjoy hiking and being in nature. We even have the same views on politics and religion." The lawyer leaned forward, putting down his pen. "I have to be honest, that sounds like most people's idea of a perfect partnership." "I know," the woman said with a sigh. "But you see, above all else, we both love men." So, I live in Chicago. When I heard Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson were guest preachers at a nearby church, I decided to go there and check them out in person. As soon as I sat down, Reverend Sharpton came over to me. I don't know why. Maybe it was because I was the only white person in the church. He laid his hands on my shoulder and said, "By the will of Jesus, the Lord Almighty, and the will of God, you will walk today." I told him I was not paralyzed. Then Jesse Jackson came by and said, "By the grace of God and his Son Jesus, the Lord Almighty, you will walk today." Again, I said that there is nothing wrong with me. After the sermon, I stepped outside, and lo and behold, they were right. My car was gone. So a man with a talkative parrot is getting married. On the wedding day, he warns the bird, "You're always poking your beak into everything from that window. When my new wife and I get back, face the wall and don't turn around, no matter what you hear, or I'll wring your neck. Got it?" The parrot grumbles, but agrees. After the wedding, the couple returns and starts packing for their honeymoon. The wife's suitcase is overstuffed and they can't close it. "Sit on it, honey," the man says. She tries, grunting and groaning, but the case won't budge. "You try," she says. He climbs on, straining and huffing, but no luck. "Finally," he says, "let's both get on top." The parrot spins around and squawks, "Neck or no neck. I gotta see this." So one rainy Sunday afternoon, a young couple were on their way to their church to get married. On the way there, their car lost control and slammed into a telephone pole, sending them both to heaven instantly. The couple soon found themselves standing in front of St. Peter at the pearly gates, welcoming them to heaven. The young woman asks Peter if they could get married in heaven, since their time on earth was cut short. He replies that he'll get back with them on that request. A month later, St. Peter finds them and announces that they can, in fact, get married in heaven. To his surprise, the woman asks, just wondering if things don't work out, will we be able to get a divorce? With a stern look in his eye, Peter blurts out, "Look, lady, it took me a month to find a preacher up here. Do you really think I'm gonna find a lawyer?" So, a big passenger plane was flying smoothly when a fast fighter jet zoomed by. The jet pilot wanted to show off. He called the plane pilot on his radio and said, "Hey, Captain, watch this." He did a spin, climbed high, and made a loud boom as he dove down low. Then he asked the plane pilot, "What did you think of that?" The plane pilot said, "That was truly impressive, but watch this." The plane kept flying steadily for about 5 minutes. Then the plane pilot said, "What did you think of that?" The jet pilot, confused, asked, "What the heck did you do?" The plane pilot chuckled and said, "I stood up, stretched my legs, walked to the back, used the toilet, then got a cup of coffee and a cinnamon roll, and secured a date for the next 3 nights in a 5-star hotel paid for by the company." So a young woman was traveling in Rome for the first time. Feeling somewhat drawn toward the grandeur of a beautiful cathedral, she decided to step in and admire the stained glass windows she'd heard so much about. As she approached the entrance, a kindly but stern-looking priest emerged. "Excuse me, miss," he said, raising a hand to stop her. "I'm afraid I can't let you enter dressed like that." The young woman tilted her head in confusion. "Like what?" she asked. "My dress is modest." The priest hesitated, clearing his throat awkwardly. "Well, it's not the dress itself. It's just that you are not wearing a bra. I can't let you in like that." "Seriously?" said the woman angrily. "I have a divine right." "A divine left too, miss," the priest replied, "but you still can't come in." So an extremely shy and modest man checked into the hospital for a series of tests. The last test upset his stomach badly. After making several false alarm trips to the bathroom, he figured the next cramp was just another false alarm and stayed in bed. Suddenly, the dam burst, and he completely soiled his sheets. Mortified beyond reason, he leapt out of bed, bundled the messy sheets together, and panicked. Not knowing what else to do, he hurled them right out the hospital window. Down on the street, a drunk happened to be staggering by when the sheets landed on him. Flailing and cursing, he wrestled with the mess until it dropped in a heap at his feet. Just then, a security guard who had seen the whole thing walked up and asked, "What on earth just happened here?" Still staring at the pile, the drunk muttered, "I'm not sure, but I think I just beat the crap out of a ghost." So a woman hits a chicken as it's crossing the road. She pulls over as the local farmer comes out in hysterics. My God, that was my prized egg-laying hen. We're already underwater on the house. How will I feed my family now? He cries. The woman begins to panic. Thinking fast, she pulls out her checkbook and writes him a $500 check. I'm so sorry, she says. Here, take this. I hope it is enough to repay you. The farmer dries his eyes and takes the money, and she gets on her way. He then heads back to his chicken coop, where his wife is waiting for him, and he tells her about the chicken and the check. Suspicious, she squints and asks, why was our chicken crossing the road? And he leans in, picks up 2 more chickens and says, because we have a mortgage. Honey. So, it was a lively family gathering, with every generation crowded around the dinner table. Laughter filled the room as stories were shared, and the youngest kids, ever the troublemakers, were up to their usual antics. Spotting an opportunity for mischief, the kids managed to sneak a Viagra tablet into Grandpa's drink while no one was looking. Oblivious to their prank, Grandpa took a sip, smiled, and carried on with the conversation. A little while later, Grandpa stood up and announced, "Excuse me, everyone, I need to head to the bathroom." He shuffled off, but when he returned, his trousers were completely soaked. Concerned, one of his children asked, "What happened, Grandpa?" Grandpa sighed and said, "Well, I went to the bathroom to pee. I took it out, but then I looked at it and realized it wasn't mine, so I put it back." So a father and his 6-year-old son are walking down the street, and they come across 2 dogs making love. The boy is shocked by what he sees and asks his father, "Daddy, what are they doing?" The father, not wanting to lie to his son, says they're just making a puppy. "Okay," says the son, and the father is relieved that he doesn't probe further. The next day, the son bursts into his parents' room and sees them making love. The father jumps up and quickly covers himself. Knowing he's in for an interesting talk, walks downstairs with him and they sit at the dining room table. His son asks him, "Daddy, what were you and Mommy doing?" Again, wanting to be honest with his son, he says me and Mommy were making a baby. His son pauses for a moment, thinking, and then replies, "Flip Mommy over. I want a puppy." So I went to the grocery store the other day and saw these 2 over 70-year-old men violently ram their carts into each other. I helped one of them up and listened in while they were talking. The first guy said, "Terribly sorry. I'm looking for my wife. I can't find her anywhere." The second guy replied, "Well, that's a coincidence. I've been looking all over for my wife too. I tell you what, how about we help each other look for them?" The first man agreed and asked, "What does your wife look like, so I will know her when we see her?" The other guy said, "Well, she's 34 years old. She's wearing a blue skirt with long, slender legs sticking out, and a bright yellow sleeveless shirt that I told her before we left reveals too much." "What does your look like?" The first man then replied, "Doesn't matter. Let's look for yours." So a woman is caught red-handed with her lover one afternoon when she hears her husband at the door. Panicking, she prays, "Please, God, don't let my husband see us." To her surprise, God answers, "All right, but remember, one day you will die on the water." Relieved, she thanks God and moves on with her life. More than 20 years pass, and the memory of that day fades. One day, she's on a luxurious cruise, sipping a cocktail on the deck, when suddenly, alarms blare the ship is sinking. Terrified, she drops to her knees and prays, "God, I know my time has come, But would you really sink an entire ship full of innocent people just for me? God replies, Lady, why do you think it took me over 20 years to fill this ship? So one day, President Bush was looking for a call girl. He found 3 such girls in a local lounge, a blonde, a brunette, and a redhead. To the blonde, he said, I am the President of the United States. Now, how much would it cost me to spend some time with you? She replied, $200. To the brunette, he asked the same question. Her reply was $100. He then asked the redhead. Her reply was, Mr. President, if you can get my skirt up as high as my taxes, my panties as low as my wages, get that thing of yours as hard as the times, and keep it rising like the gas prices. Keep me warmer than it is in my apartment and screw me the way you do the public. Then believe me, Mr. President, it isn't going to cost you a damn cent. So it was the first day of kindergarten, and Miss Jones decided to get to know the children. Okay, class, let's take turns in sharing what our mummy or daddy does for a job. Mary raises her hand and says, My mom is a dentist. Luke calls out, My daddy is a plumber, and on it goes, until nearly the whole class has shared something. Miss Jones sees Henry looking nervous, so she prompts him, Henry, what does your mom or daddy do for work? Henry replies, Mom doesn't work, and Daddy is dead. Taken aback, Miss Jones tries to persevere. Oh, well, do you know what your daddy did before he died? Henry's face lit up triumphantly, and he bellowed. I sure do. He fell down, turned blue, and crapped all over the rug. So, I was talking to my new colleague about why he left his last job. He said, well, here's the story. Last week was my birthday, but neither my children nor my wife wished me. I went to work, and my friends and colleagues also ignored me. I was feeling pretty down in the dumps. He continued, but then my beautiful and hot secretary greeted and wished me. I was feeling so happy. After work, we had dinner together, and then she took me to her apartment. She said she had a big surprise for me and asked me to wait for 5 minutes while she went into her bedroom. With a deep sigh, he explained 5 minutes later, she came out with a big birthday cake, and my family and friends all shouting, Happy birthday, while I was waiting on the sofa. Naked. So a cowboy walked into a local insurance office, dusty boots and all, looking to buy himself a health insurance policy. The agent, a clean-cut fellow in a tie, welcomed him and began going through the standard list of questions. Ever had an accident? The agent asked, pen poised over the form. The cowboy leaned back in his chair, thought for a moment, and replied, Nope, not one. The agent raised an eyebrow. None. You've never had any accidents? The cowboy shook his head firmly. Nope. Haven't had one. Never. The agent flipped through the form, scanning the cowboy's earlier answers. Well, it says here you were bitten by a snake once. Wouldn't you consider that an accident? The cowboy sat up straight, narrowed his eyes, and said, Heck no. That damn thing bit me on purpose. Did you know that a herd of buffalo can move only as fast as the slowest buffalo? When the herd is hunted, it is the slowest and weakest ones at the back that are killed first. This natural selection is good for the herd as a whole because the general speed and health of the whole group keeps improving by the regular killing of the weakest members. In much the same way the human brain can only operate as fast as the slowest brain cells. Excessive intake of alcohol, we all know, kills brain cells, but naturally it attacks the slowest and weakest brain cells first. In this way, regular consumption of beer eliminates the weaker brain cells, making the brain a faster and more efficient machine. That's why you always feel smarter after a few beers, and that's why beer is so good for you. So, a beautiful Swedish blonde walks into a Vegas casino and goes straight to the roulette table. She smiles at the two dealers and bets $20,000 on one spin. "I hope you don't mind," she says in a dreamy voice, "but I feel much luckier naked." And she peeled off all her clothes, staying completely naked. "Come on, baby. Mommy needs a new set of clothes." The roulette wheel stops on 13. I won, shouts the blonde and jumps in the air in excitement. She collects the winnings and her clothes, hugs the dealers, and disappears. The two dealers looked at each other in shock until one of them pulled himself together and asked, "Did she bet on 13? "I don't know," said the other dealer. "I thought you were looking." So a blonde decides to go horseback riding, even though she has had no lessons or prior experience. She mounts the horse, and it immediately springs into motion. It gallops along at a steady and rhythmic pace. But the blonde begins to slip from the saddle in terror. She grabs for the horse's mane, but cannot seem to get a firm grip. She tries throwing her arms around the horse's neck, but slides down the side of the horse anyway. The horse gallops along, seemingly impervious to its rider. Finally, she leaps away from the horse to try and throw herself to safety, only to find her foot caught in the stirrup. She is now at the mercy of the horse's pounding hooves as her head struck the ground time and time again. She's mere moments from unconsciousness when, to her great fortune, the Woolworths manager sees her and shuts the horse off. So this woman noticed every time she made love with her boyfriend, a green spot would develop on the inside of her inner thigh. It would stay there a couple days, then disappear. She got very concerned and made an appointment with the doctor. So she goes to the doctor and explains her issue. The doctor asks her a few questions about it and looks at it. The doctor is stumped and said he will run some blood tests to see if he can get to the cause of the green spot. The following week, the woman gets a call from the doctor, asking her to come in and bring her boyfriend. At the appointment, the doctor said, "I have good news and bad news. The good news is, you are perfectly fine. Nothing is wrong with you." The boyfriend then asks, "What is the bad news?" The doctor looked at the boyfriend and said, "That earring in your left ear is fake, not real gold." So proudly showing off his new apartment to a couple of his friends late one night, a drunk man led them straight into his bedroom. Against the wall stood a huge brass gong. One of his buddies frowned and asked, "What's that big brass gong for?" The drunk grinned. "That's not a gong. It's a talking clock." His friend raised an eyebrow. "A talking clock? Seriously?" "Yup," the drunk replied proudly. The second guest squinted at it. "All right then, how does it work?" "Watch this," the drunk said. He grabbed a hammer, wound up, and gave the gong a thunderous pound that shook the room. The three of them stood in silence, waiting. Finally, from the other side of the wall, a muffled, angry voice shouted, "For crying out loud, you idiot! It's 3 in the morning." So a man foolishly asked his wife why she kept staring out of the window. Taking a very deep breath, she replied, "I'm really fed up with the state of Mrs. Brown's blinds. Mrs. Perkins aren't much better, and that Mrs. Lewis scruffy cow. Look at them filthy. They're just not house-proud like me. Dirty blinds are such an eyesore. If you were a real man, you'd go over and get them to do something about it. In fact, you must. I won't stand for it any longer. I'll tell you what, her husband said as he peered through the window beside her. I'll see what I can do. The following morning, she approached him, beaming. I can't believe it. The blinds, they're all immaculate. What did you say to those women? Nothing, he told her. I just cleaned the window. So a 48-year-old lawyer had a heart attack and was technically dead for a few seconds before the paramedics brought him back to life. While he was dead, he saw the afterlife. He was in hell. But hell was like an awesome beach party where people were drinking pina coladas and playing beach volleyball, and everyone was in a swimsuit. After the paramedics brought the lawyer back to life, he cleaned up his diet and exercised more and lived another 35 years until he died of old age. This time when he died, he went back to hell, but it was the typical hell you'd imagine, people doing hard labor and being tortured. The lawyer was confused. He asked the devil, I was here 35 years ago and it was awesome. What happened? The devil responded, Oh, you must have visited during our summer session. So, during a medical school exam, the professor asks one of the students, Can you name the signs of pregnancy? The student freezes, having no clue. From the back of the room, his buddy whispers, Hair loss, crooked legs, swollen belly. Desperate, the student repeats loudly, Hair loss, crooked legs, swollen belly. The class goes silent. The professor raises an eyebrow. Tell me, do my legs look crooked? The student stammers. Yes, sir, they do. The professor frowns. Is my hair falling out? Yes, sir. The professor taps his belly. And is my belly swollen? Yes, sir. The professor smirks and says, Well, then, when I give birth, you pass the exam. So a young Italian girl was preparing for her first date, and her grandmother offered some wise advice. Sit down, dear, the grandmother said, and let me tell you about those young boys. He might try to kiss you, and you might enjoy it, but do not let him. He may also attempt to touch you, which you might like too, but resist that as well. Most importantly, he might try to lie on top of you, and though it might feel nice, do not allow it. That would disgrace our family. Armed with this guidance, the granddaughter went on her date. The next day, she returned to tell her grandmother how it went. You were right, grandmother. I did not let him disgrace our family. When he tried, I turned the tables, got on top, and disgraced his family instead. So a man staggers into an emergency room with a concussion, multiple bruises, 2 black eyes, and a 5-iron wrapped tightly around his throat. Naturally, the doctor asks him what happened. Well, it was like this, said the man. I was having a quiet round of golf with my wife, when at a difficult hole, we both sliced our balls into a pasture of cows. We went to look for them, and while I was rooting around, I noticed one of the cows has something white in its rear end. I walked over and lifted up the tail, and sure enough, there was the golf ball with my wife's monogram on it, stuck right in the middle of the cow's butt. That's when I made my mistake. What did you do? Asks the doctor. Well, I lifted the tail and yelled to my wife, Hey, this looks like yours. So, A family took their frail, elderly mother to a nursing home and left her, hoping she would be well cared for. The next morning, the nurses bathed her, fed her a tasty breakfast, and set her in a chair at a window overlooking a lovely flower garden. She seemed okay, but after a while, she slowly started to tilt sideways in her chair. Two attentive nurses immediately rushed up to catch her and straighten her up. Again, she seemed okay, but after a while, she slowly started to tilt over to her other side. The nurses rushed back and once more brought her back upright. This went on all morning. Later, the family arrived to see how the old woman was adjusting to her new home. "So, Grandma, how is it here? Are they treating you all right?" "It's pretty nice," she replied, "except they won't let me fart." So the Finnish president was planning a visit to a border town in the Soviet Union. The local commissar, hoping to impress the Finns, decided to visit a local school. In preparation, he had all the children learn new songs, march in formation, wear their best uniforms, etc. Propaganda at its finest. The big day arrived, and the commissar stood before the students and loudly asked, "Who has the best schools in the world?" To which the student replied, "The Soviet Union." He asked again, "Who has the best playgrounds and candies in the world?" Again, the students shouted, "The Soviet Union." This went on for about half an hour when the Finnish president heard a little boy crying. He asked him, "What's the matter, child? Why are you crying?" The boy replied, "Because I want to go to the Soviet Union." So there once was a bear and a rabbit that hated each other. One day, they found a genie in a lamp who said he would grant them each 3 wishes. The bear went first and he said, "I wish to be the only male bear in this forest." And he got his wish. The rabbit said, "I want a motorcycle helmet." And he got his wish. The bear went up and said, "I wish to be the only male bear in the United States, and all the rest to be female." And he got his wish. The rabbit said, "I wish I had a motorcycle to go with that helmet." And he got his wish. The bear said, "I wish I was the only male bear in the world, and all the rest were females." And he got his wish. It was the rabbit's turn, and he said, "I wish that bear was gay," and rode away on his motorcycle. So Michael Murphy goes into the confessional box after years of being away from the church. Sighing, thinking about his many sins, he gets into the church. Spotting there is no line at the confessional, he pulls aside the curtain, enters, and sits himself down. Shocked, he realizes here's a fully equipped bar with crystal glasses, the best vestry wine, Guinness on tap, cigars, and liqueur chocolates nearby. On the wall, a fine photographic display of various women who appear to have misplaced their garments. He hears a priest come in. "Father, forgive me," says Murphy. "I think it's been a while since I've been to confession, and to be sure I must say that this place is much better than it used to be." The priest freezes and stares at him. "Get out, you idiot. You're on my side." So a butcher walks into a lawyer's office, looking frustrated. "How can I help you?" the lawyer asks, glancing up from his desk. The butcher crosses his arms. "If a dog caused damage to my property, can I charge the owner to repair the damage?" The lawyer leans back in his chair. "Of course." The butcher smirks. "Good. You owe me $40. The lawyer raises an eyebrow. "Why?" "Your dog ate $40 worth of beef at my store," the butcher replies flatly. The lawyer pauses for a moment, then silently holds out his hand. The butcher looks confused. "What's that for?" "You owe me $60, the lawyer says. The butcher's eyes widen. What? Why? The lawyer adjusts his tie and says, the legal consulting fee is $100. So an investment counselor decided to start her own firm. Being shrewd and diligent, business quickly began to pour in. Soon, she realized she needed an in-house counsel and started interviewing young lawyers. As I'm sure you can understand, she began with one of the first applicants. In a business like this, our personal integrity must be beyond question. She leaned forward and asked, Mr. Peterson, are you an honest lawyer? Honest, replied the job prospect. Let me tell you about honesty. My father lent me $15,000 for my education, and I paid back every penny the moment I tried my very first case. Impressive. And what sort of case was that? She inquired. The lawyer squirmed in his seat and admitted he sued me for the money. So a farmer had a three-legged pig, and his neighbor finally asked, "Why's your pig only got 3 legs?" "Well, I'll tell you," the farmer said. "One day, I was plowing the field when my tractor tipped over and pinned me underneath. That pig ran for help and saved my life." "Oh, so that's how he lost his leg," the neighbor guessed. "No," said the farmer. "Another time, my wife and I were sound asleep when the house caught fire. That pig woke us up and saved our lives." "So that's how he lost his leg," the neighbor said. "Nope," the farmer replied. The neighbor, now exasperated, demanded, "Then how did he lose his leg?" The farmer grinned. "Well, when you've got a pig that good, you don't eat him all at once." So a man walks into a bar. The bartender asks, "Why the long face?" The man replies, "I just found out my wife is sleeping with another man. I've decided I'm going to drink myself to death." The bartender looks shocked and says, "I'm sorry, I can't help you do that." The man asks, "Well, what would you do in my situation?" The bartender puffs himself up a bit and says, "If I found out a guy was sleeping with my wife, I wouldn't sit around feeling sorry for myself. I'd kill the guy." The man jumps up from his stool and shouts, "That's a great idea! Thanks," and runs out of the bar. A couple hours goes by, and the bartender is starting to get nervous when the man walks back into the bar with a smile on his face. "Did you kill the guy?" the bartender asks nervously. "Nope, I slept with your wife. Whiskey, please." So a man who liked to drink was warned by his long-suffering wife that if he comes home drunk one more time, she will leave him. The next evening, he is out with his colleagues after work, drinks way too much, and is sick all down his jacket. He explains that his wife is likely to leave him when a colleague says, "Tell you what you do. Put $20 in your inside pocket and explain that someone else was sick on you and gave you money for the cleaning bill." After agreeing that it was a fine idea, he goes home, whereupon his wife spots the sick and starts to have a go at him. He says, "No, listen, dear. Some chap threw up on me and gave me 20 to get it clean." The wife replied, "So why do you have 2 20s in your hand?" "Ah," answered the man, "the other 20 is from the chap that shat in my pants." So, a married couple is lying in bed one night. The wife is curled up, ready to go to sleep, and the husband turns his bed lamp on to read a book. As he's reading, he periodically reaches over to his wife and fondles her special bits. He does this a few times, but only for a very short interval before returning to read his book. The wife gradually becomes more and more aroused, and, assuming that her husband is seeking some encouragement before going further, she gets up and starts stripping in front of him. The husband is confused and asks, "Why are you taking off your clothes?" His wife replies, "You were rubbing me downtown. I thought it was foreplay." The husband says, "No, not at all." His wife asks angrily, "Well, what the hell were you doing then?" "I was just wetting my fingers so I could turn the pages in my book." So an old-timer walks into the doctor's office. He marches right up to the reception desk and loudly declares, "There's something wrong with my Willie." The receptionist, visibly embarrassed, admonishes the man. "Sir," she said, "you can't just come in here yelling about your privates. This a family practice. There are women and children in the waiting area. Have some decorum. Make something up, like my nose hurts or something. Now, go outside, come back in and try again." So, the old man goes outside, waits a beat, and come back in. He marches right up to the reception desk and loudly declares, "There's something wrong with my ear." Offering a big smile, the receptionist says, "Much better. Now, what's wrong with your ear?" The old man replies, "I can't piss out of it." So two graduate students are browsing an old, musty library. They're looking through special collections for any books that might help them with their dissertations. One of them pulls out a particularly old-looking volume, and when he opens it, a genie emerges. "For freeing me from that book, I will grant you a wish," the genie says. "You can have great wealth, great beauty, or great wisdom." The grad student, being a scholar, chooses wisdom. "Done," the genie says. He snaps his fingers and disappears in a flash. The grad student is left stunned, a look of wonder in his eyes. His friend waits for him to speak, and when he doesn't, he prompts him, "Well, share some of your wisdom." The grad student, holding the book, blinks, looks down sadly, and says, "I should have taken the wealth." So the room was packed with expectant mothers and their partners, eagerly awaiting the next piece of wisdom from the instructor. "Ladies," she began, "exercise is crucial during pregnancy. Walking, in particular, is great for strengthening those pelvic muscles, which will make delivery a breeze. Just take it easy, make pit stops, and stick to soft surfaces like grass or a path." She then turned to the men, saying, "Remember, you're in this together. Going for walks with your partner can be a bonding experience for both of you." The room fell silent as the men pondered this revelation. After a few moments, a young man at the back of the room timidly raised his hand. "Yes?" the instructor inquired. "I was just wondering," he said sheepishly, "if it would be okay if she carries my golf bag while we walk." So Mick takes a job on a construction site in Dublin. Part of his daily work is to clear any sewage and empty the waste from the pipes. Every Friday he has to hand in his timesheets. After the second week, the boss pulls him over for a word. "Mick," says the boss, "I need to have a word about your timesheets. For the past 2 weeks, all you have wrote on them is 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. shoveling shit." "That's right, sir. That's what I do. Shovel shit," says Mick. "Well, Mick," says the boss, "in future, can you not write shoveling shit? Can you write excavating excrement instead?" "For hell's sake," says Mick. "If I could write excavating excrement, I wouldn't be shoveling damn shit." So, you know you're finally 50 when you now have more hair on your knuckles than you do on your head. Your idea of getting lucky is being able to find your car in Walmart's parking lot on the first try. You have to use your GPS to locate your feet because you can't see over your belly. Your trick knee goes out more than you do. Your idea of a hot time is putting a heating pad on your hurting back. You want your kids to think you're cool, so you ask them to help set up your own page on MyFace, and you can't understand what they're giggling about. Getting some action means all those prunes your doctor is making you eat are doing their job. You and your teeth have decided that a separation is the best thing for your relationship. And getting high means it's time to take your blood pressure medication. So it was 5 o'clock, and the shift at the coal mine was over. And right on schedule, here came Timmy, pushing a wheelbarrow with nothing in it but a single taped-up cardboard box. The first day, the mine inspector stopped him. "What's in the box, Timmy?" "Nothing," Timmy said. The inspector checked. It was empty. The second day, the same thing. "I know you're up to something," the inspector muttered after finding the box empty again. On the third day, out comes Timmy again, pushing the wheelbarrow with a box in it. The inspector was fuming. "I've had it," he yelled, stepping in front of Timmy. "I know you're stealing something. It's driving me mad. For my own sanity, please, just tell me what it is." Timmy looked around, leaned in close and whispered, "Wheelbarrows." So as I emerged from my shower cocoon, I detected a mysterious presence in my kitchen. With my wife out on a shopping spree, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I grabbed my trusty 1903 heirloom rifle, which had long retired from active duty, and stealthily made my way downstairs, completely oblivious to the fact that I was as naked as the day I was born. Rounding the corner with my gun at the ready, I came face to face with my wife, who was innocently loading the dishwasher. She looked at me, puzzled, and asked, "What on earth are you doing?" "I thought I heard an intruder," I explained, my cheeks burning with embarrassment. "I came down to scare him off." Scanning the contours of my doughy, naked body, she mumbled, "You didn't need the gun." So a pretty lady is standing on the side of a bridge, looking over it and thinking about jumping off. A homeless alcoholic man comes up to her as he was walking nearby. The lady notices the man coming and says, "Go away. There's nothing you can say to me to change my mind. You cannot help me." "Well, if you're going to jump anyway, why don't we make love? At least I'll enjoy it," says the homeless drunk. "No way. You're disgusting. Go away." The homeless man turns and starts walking away. The lady tells him, "Is that all you were going to say to me? Nothing more? Won't you try to convince me that life is worth living, that I should not jump off?" "Where are you going?" The homeless man replies, "I have to make it down to the bottom. If I hurry, you'll still be warm." So a car gets a flat tire on the interstate one day. The lady driver eases it over onto the shoulder of the road. She carefully steps out of the car and opens the trunk. She then takes out 2 cardboard men, unfolds them, and stands them at the rear of the vehicle facing oncoming traffic. The lifelike cardboard men are in trench coats and appear naked to approaching drivers. Not surprisingly, the traffic became snarled and backed up. It wasn't very long before a police car arrives. The officer, clearly enraged, approaches the lady of the disabled vehicle yelling, "What is going on here?" "My car broke down," officer says, the woman calmly. "Well, what the hell are these obscene cardboard pictures doing here by the road?" asks the officer. "Well, those are my emergency flashers," she replies. So a man steps into a confessional booth and says, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." "Go on, my child. Confess your sins," the priest replies. For the past 6 days, I've been sleeping with women who aren't my wife. I see, says the priest. And this fills you with guilt? Well, yes, Father, but they're absolutely gorgeous. Are they more attractive than your wife? The priest asks. No way, Father. My wife is stunning too, the man says. But, how can I be forgiven? The priest pauses, then says, squeeze 10 lemons or limes and drink the juice. Will that absolve my sins, Father? The man asks. No, but it might wipe that smug grin off your face. So after their baby was born, the panicked father went to see the obstetrician. Doctor, the man said, I don't mind telling you, but I'm a little upset because my daughter has red hair. She can't possibly be mine. Nonsense, the doctor said. Even though you and your wife both have black hair, one of your ancestors may have contributed red hair to the gene pool. It isn't possible, the man insisted. This can't be. Our families on both sides had jet black hair for generations. Well, said the doctor, let me ask you this. How often do you make love? The man seemed a bit ashamed. I've been working very hard for the past year. We only made love once or twice, every few months. Well, there you have it, the doctor said confidently. It's rust. So, 2 virgins get married and go on their honeymoon. Unfortunately, neither knows what to do, so they call the groom's mother for advice. She suggests they sit together on the bed, kiss, snuggle, and let things happen naturally. The newlyweds follow her advice, but nothing happens. The groom calls his mother again and asks what to do next. She tells them to take off their clothes, get under the covers, and let nature take its course. They try this, but still nothing happens. Frustrated, the groom calls his mother once more. By now, she's exasperated and says, listen, dumbass. Just take the biggest thing you've got and stick it in her hairiest spot. The groom pauses for a moment, then asks, okay, so I've got my nose in her armpit. Now what? So the minister of a small congregation was about to start his sermon when he noticed a young woman in the front row wearing a tight dress with her breasts almost hanging out. He couldn't concentrate on his message to the flock, so he dismissed the service and asked to speak to the woman after everyone else left the church. When they were alone, the Reverend said in his sternest, lecturing voice, just what do you mean, coming to church dressed like that? Why, Reverend? The young woman replied, all of my boyfriends tell me that they can hear the angels sing when they put their heads on my breasts. Well, let me check, said the Reverend, placing his head between her breasts. After several minutes, he raised his head and said, I don't hear any angels singing. Of course not, Reverend, she said. You're not plugged in yet. So a lady visits her doctor and is asked to sit on his table and explain to him what the problem seems to be. The doctor is shocked when instead of just telling him, she pulls up her skirt to reveal that she has 3 holes down there. The normal one, and then one on either side. The doctor is flabbergasted and tells her he's never seen anything of the sort in all his years in the profession. Annoyed, the lady suggests the doctor stop staring and offer some advice. The doctor swiftly swings around on his chair, grabs some sellotape, and proceeds to tape over each of the holes on either side of the normal one. The woman, now completely perplexed, says to the doctor, what is this? Some kind of magic tape? Will it make the extra holes disappear? The doctor says, no, but it'll stop you from getting screwed left, right, and center. So a man feeling very depressed walked into a bar and ordered a triple Scotch whiskey. As the bartender poured him the drink, he remarked, "That's quite a heavy drink. Is something wrong?" After quickly downing his drink, the man replied, "I got home and found my wife in bed with my best friend." "Wow," exclaimed the bartender as he poured the man a second triple Scotch. "No wonder you needed a stiff drink. This one's on the house." As the man finished the second Scotch, the bartender asked him, "So what did you do?" "I walked over to my wife," the man replied, looked her straight in the eye and told her that we were through. "I told her to pack her stuff and to get the hell out." "That makes sense," said the bartender. "But what about your best friend?" "I walked over to him, looked him right in the eye and said, 'Bad dog.'" So a man stepped onto the overnight train and asked to speak to the conductor. Upon meeting him, the passenger told the conductor, "I need you to wake me up in Philadelphia. I'm a deep sleeper and can be kinda grouchy when I get up, but no matter what, I want you to help me make that stop. Here's $100 to make sure." The conductor agreed and they shook hands. The man fell asleep, and when he awoke, he heard the announcement that the train was approaching New York. Furious, he collared the conductor. "I gave you $100 to make sure I got off in Philadelphia, you worthless fool." "Wow," another passenger said to his traveling companion. "Is that guy angry?" "Yeah," his companion replied. "Still, not half as angry as that guy they forced off the train in Philadelphia." So a girl was a prostitute, but she did not want her grandma to know. One day, the police raided a whole group of prostitutes at a party in a hotel, and she was among them. The police took them outside and had all the prostitutes line up along the driveway. Suddenly, the girl's grandma came by and saw her. "Why are you standing in line, dear?" she asked. Not willing to let her grandma know the truth, the girl told her that the policemen were passing out free oranges. "Why? That is awfully nice of them. I think I'll get some for myself," said the grandma. A policeman went down the line, asking for information from all of the prostitutes. When he got to Grandma, he exclaimed, "Wow, still going at it at your age. How do you do it?" Grandma replied, "Oh, it's easy, dear. I just take out my dentures and suck them dry." So at the end of a tiny deserted bar is a huge black man, around 7 foot tall and 350 pounds. He's having a few beers when a short, well-dressed, and obviously gay man walks in and sits beside him. After 3 or 4 beers, the gay fella finally plucks up the courage to say something to the big guy. Leaning over, he cups his huge ear. "Do you want a hand job?" he whispers. At this, the massive man leaps up with fire in his eyes and smacks the man in the face, knocking him off the stool. He proceeds to beat him all the way out of the bar. Finally, he leaves him, badly bruised, in the parking lot and returns to his seat as if nothing had happened. Amazed, the bartender quickly brings over another beer. "I've never seen you react like that," he says. "Just what did he say to you?" "I'm not sure," the big guy replies. "Something about a job." So a man has been at the pub all night drinking. The bartender finally says that the bar is closed. So our man stands up to leave and falls flat on his face. He figures he'll crawl outside and get some fresh air and maybe that will sober him up. Once outside, he stands up but again falls flat on his face. He crawls home. Reaching the door, he tries to stand up and yet again falls flat on his face. He crawls through the door and up the stairs. When he reaches his bed, he summons the last of his strength and tries one final time to stand. It's no use. He tumbles into bed and is soon sound asleep, only to awaken the next morning to the sound of his wife standing over him shouting, "So, you've been out drinking again. How did you know?" he asks, his head hung in shame. "The pub called. You left your damn wheelchair down there again." So while on a road trip, an elderly couple stopped at a roadside restaurant for lunch. After finishing their meal, they left the restaurant and resumed their trip. When leaving, the elderly woman unknowingly left her glasses on the table, and she didn't miss them until they had been driving about 20 minutes. By then, to add to the aggravation, they had to travel quite a distance before they could find a place to turn around in order to return to the restaurant to retrieve her glasses. All the way back, the elderly husband became the classic grouchy old man. He fussed and complained and scolded his wife relentlessly during the entire return drive. The more he chided her, the more agitated he became. He just wouldn't let up 1 minute. To her relief, they finally arrived at the restaurant. As the woman got out of the car and hurried inside to retrieve her glasses, the old geezer yelled to her, "While you're in there, you might as well get my hat and the credit card." So a man faces a violation for adding horse meat to the chicken stew in his restaurant. At the court, he's asked why he did it and how much horse meat was in those stew. For the money, of course, and I solemnly swear I always kept the ratio 50-50. While the infraction caused many unhappy customers, upon seeing the man's honesty, the judge decides not to revoke his license. However, he in turn must always advertise that horse is part of the ingredients. With a sigh of relief, the restaurant owner pays the fine and walks out of the courthouse with his wife and friend. The friend then asked him, "Did you really put horse meat, or did you add anything else with the chicken?" "Nope, only horse meat and chicken." "Now tell me the truth, man. Come on. It was mostly horse meat, wasn't it?" "Nope. It was always 50-50. 1 horse per 1 chicken." So, 3 dead bodies turn up at a mortuary, all with very big smiles on their faces, and the police call on the coroner to investigate. "First body," says the coroner, "Pierre Dubois, Frenchman, 70. Died of heart failure while making love to his 20-year-old mistress." "Hence the smile," says the coroner. "Second body is Gregory Campbell, Scotsman, 25, who won $50,000 in the lottery. Spent it all on whiskey. Died of alcohol poisoning. Hence the smile." He says. The police inspector asked, "So what about this third body?" "Ah," says the coroner, "this is the most unusual one. Paddy Murphy, Irish, 30, struck by lightning." "Why the broad grin, then?" inquires the inspector. "He thought he was having his picture taken." So Bubba walked into a doctor's office and the receptionist asked him what he had. Bubba said, "Shingles." So she wrote down his name, address, medical insurance number, and told him to have a seat. 15 minutes later, a nurse's aide came out and asked Bubba what he had. Bubba said, "Shingles." So she wrote down his height, weight, a complete medical history, and told Bubba to wait in the examining room. A half-hour later, a nurse came in and asked Bubba what he had. Bubba said, "Shingles." So the nurse gave Bubba a blood test, a blood pressure test, an electrocardiogram, and told Bubba to take off all his clothes and wait for the doctor. An hour later, the doctor came in and asked Bubba what he had. Bubba said, "Shingles." The doctor asked, "Where?" Bubba said, "Outside on the truck." "Where do you want me to unload them?" So a young woman wearing a sleeveless dress walks into a pub. She walks up to a bunch of men sitting at the table and raises her arm, revealing a hairy armpit, and pointing at the men says, "Which one of you is going to buy this woman a drink?" The men start ignoring her and go about their business. But then an old drunk man at the end of the table shouts, "Get this beautiful ballerina a drink." The bartender gives her a drink, which after finishing she again repeats the action. "Who will buy me a drink?" All the while revealing the same hairy armpit. The old man yet again slaps his money on the bar and says, "Get this ballerina another drink." This time, before giving her the drink, the bartender walks up to the man and asks, "Sorry, sir. I know it's none of my business, but why do you keep calling her a ballerina?" The old man replies, "Anybody who can raise their leg up so high must be a ballerina." So God was giving out traits to Adam and Eve. He had 2 left and decided to ask their preference. He said, "So I have 2 things left for you both. The first is peeing while standing up." Adam jumped up and said, Me. I want to pee standing up. Then I can just pee wherever I am standing. Oh, and I can write my name in the snow." God said, "Are you sure you want it? I haven't even said what the other trait is." Adam said, "I don't care. Peeing standing up is so cool, nothing can beat that." God shrugged and asked, "Eve, are you okay with this?" Eve looked at how happy Adam was and shrugged herself. "It's okay. I'm sure I'll also be happy with whatever I get." God nodded yes. "For you, Eve, the last trait, then multiple orgasms." So, Muhammad went to school in Ireland. "What's your name?" asked the teacher. "Muhammad," he replied. "You're in Ireland now," replied the teacher. "So from now on you will be known as Mike." Muhammad returned home after school. "How was your day, Muhammad?" his mother asked. "My name is not Muhammad. I'm in Ireland, and now my name is Mike." "Are you ashamed of your name? Are you trying to dishonor your parents, your heritage, your religion? Shame on you." And his mother beat the shit out of him. Then she called his father, who beat the shit out of him again. The next day, Muhammad returned to school. The teacher saw all of his fresh bruises. "What happened to you, Mike?" she asked. The kid replied, "Well, shortly after becoming an Irishman, I was attacked by 2 damn Arabs." So, a young cowboy strolls into a saloon and takes a seat at the counter. He notices an old cowboy sitting nearby, arms folded, staring down at a full bowl of chicken congee, just staring at it, not moving a muscle. After about 15 minutes of silence, the young cowboy finally speaks up. "If you ain't gonna eat that, mind if I do?" The old cowboy slowly turns his head and, in a slow drawl, says, "Nah, go ahead." Grinning, the young cowboy slides the bowl over and starts digging in like he hasn't eaten in days. He gets almost to the bottom, then suddenly freezes. There, in the congee, is a dead mouse. He gags, then violently throws up everything he just ate right back into the bowl. The old cowboy leans over, looks into the mess, and says calmly, "Yep, that's about as far as I got, too." So one day, a 4th grade teacher asked the children what their mothers did for a living. All the typical answers came up: teacher, nurse, businesswoman, saleswoman, doctor, lawyer, and so forth. However, little Justin was being uncharacteristically quiet, so when the teacher prodded him about his mother, he replied, "Well, my mother's an exotic dancer in a cabaret, and takes off all her clothes in front of men, and they put money in her underwear. Sometimes, if the offer is really good, she will go home with some guy and stay with him all night for money. The teacher, obviously shaken by this statement, hurriedly set the other children to work on some exercises and then took little Justin aside to ask him, "Is that really true about your mother?" "No," the boy said. "She works for the Democratic National Committee and is helping to get Hillary Clinton to be our next president, but I was too embarrassed to say that in front of the other kids." So a man goes to confessional and tells the priest, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I took the Lord's name in vain while golfing." "I understand, my son," the priest says. "I play the game as well, and it can be frustrating." "What happened?" "Well," the man says, "I hit my drive on the 15th green, and it sliced to the right into the trees." "Was that when you did it?" the priest asked. "No, the ball bounced off a tree and onto the green," the man continued, "but it bounced into a sand trap." "And then you cursed?" "No, I pulled out a wedge and chipped the ball right out of there. It rolled down the green and stopped 2 feet from the cup." "Ah, that was when you blasphemed," the priest nods. "No, Father," the man replies. "Jesus Christ," the priest yells. "You missed the damn putt." So on their first night together, a newlywed couple go to change. The new bride comes out of the bathroom, showered and wearing a beautiful robe. The proud husband says, "My dear, we are married now. You can open your robe." The beautiful young woman opens her robe, and he's astonished. "Oh, wow," he exclaims. "My God, you are so beautiful. Let me take your picture." Puzzled, she asks my picture. He answers, "Yes, my dear, so I can carry your beauty next to my heart forever." She smiles, and he takes her picture. Then he heads into the bathroom to shower. He comes out wearing his robe, and the new wife asks, "Why do you wear a robe? We are married now." At that, the man opens his robe, and she exclaims, "Oh my, let me get a picture." He beams and asks why. She answers, "So I can get it enlarged." So, a well-dressed businessman was walking down the street when a little kid, covered in soot, respectfully called out to him, "Sir, can you tell me the time?" The man stopped, carefully unbuttoned his coat, pulled out a large watch from his vest pocket, and said, "It's 2:45, young man." "Thanks," said the boy. "At exactly 3 o'clock, you can kiss my ass." With that, the kid took off running. The businessman, outraged, let out an angry yell and started chasing after him. He hadn't been running long when an old friend stopped him and asked, "Why are you running like this at your age?" Gasping for breath and red with fury, the businessman replied, "That little brat asked me the time, and when I told him it was 2:45, he said that at exactly 3, I should kiss his ass." The friend looked at him and said calmly, "So why are you rushing? You've still got 10 minutes. So after a long day, a man named Mike settled into his seat on the commuter train and closed his eyes, ready for a little peace and quiet. As the train pulled out of the station, the young woman next to him pulled out her cell phone and started talking loudly. "Hi, honey. It's Lisa. I'm on the train," she went on. "Yeah, I know it's the 6:30, not the 4:30, but I had a long meeting with Mark." "No, babe. Not Mark from Accounting Mark, my boss." "Yes, sweetheart. You're the only one for me. Of course, I'm sure. Cross my heart." 15 minutes later, she was still at it, her voice echoing through the car. Mike finally had enough. He leaned over and said into the phone, Lisa, hang up the damn phone and come back to bed. Lisa no longer talks on her phone in public. So, at an international gynecologists' convention, 2 American doctors and a European doctor were having drinks and talking about work. After a few too many, they started telling stories. The first American decides to talk about the strangest patients he had had. This woman's vulva was like an apple, he explained. The second American shakes his head. That's nothing. I had a patient with a vulva like a peach. The European doctor, not wanting to be outdone by his new American friends, said, We too talk about this. I found a woman with one like a watermelon. The first American laughs, and the second American frowns and says, That's impossible. How would she walk? The European doctor looks puzzled before saying, Oh, you Americans, always obsessed with size. I thought we were talking about flavor. So, a secret agent is sent to Ireland to deliver a top-secret package. Go to this small town in Ireland. Find our agent named O'Malley and say the following to him. The shadows of the moon are getting dark. He'll reply, but the sun will guarantee the light. When he says that, give him the package and head home. So the agent goes to the small Irish town but only sees a handful of shops and a farm. He walks up to the farmer and says, I'm looking for a man named O'Malley. The farmer replies, You need to be more specific than that. The bank manager is named O'Malley. The butcher is O'Malley. The undertaker is O'Malley. And for that matter, I'm O'Malley too. Hearing that, he says to the farmer in a hushed voice, The shadows of the moon are getting dark. The farmer replies, Oh, you're looking for O'Malley, the spy. He lives in the next community west. So a guy goes to a government office to interview for a job. The interviewer asks him, Are you a veteran? Yes, I served 2 tours in Vietnam, replied the guy. Good, that counts in your favor. Do you have any service-related disabilities? Asked the interviewer. I am 100% disabled, replied the guy. A mortar round blew off my testicles, so they declared me disabled. It doesn't affect my ability to work, though. Sorry to hear about the damage, said the interviewer, but I have some good news for you. I can hire you right now. Our working hours are 8 to 4. Come in at 10 tomorrow, and we'll get you started. If working hours are from 8 to 4, why do you want me to come at 10? Well, here at the government, we don't do anything but sit around and scratch our balls for the first 2 hours. No point in you coming in for that. So an elderly Italian man who lived in the outskirts of Monte Cassino went to the local church for confession. He said, Father, during World War II, a beautiful woman knocked on my door and asked me to hide her from the enemy. So I hid her in my attic. The priest replied, That was a wonderful thing you did, my son, and you have no need to confess that. It's worse than that, Father. She started to repay me with sexual favors. The priest said, By doing that, you were both in great danger. However, 2 people together under those circumstances are greatly tempted to act that way. But if you are truly sorry for your actions, you are forgiven. Thank you, Father. That's a great load off my mind. But I have one more question. And what is that? Said the priest. Should I tell her the war is over? So, a man wakes up one morning to find a gorilla on his roof. Puzzled, he checks the yellow pages and, to his surprise, finds an ad for gorilla removers. He calls the number, and the gorilla remover assures him he'll be over in 30 minutes. True to his word, the gorilla remover arrives and steps out of his van equipped with a ladder, a baseball bat, a shotgun, and a fierce-looking pit bull. The homeowner, curious, asks, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to put this ladder up against the roof. Then I'm going to go up there and knock the gorilla off the roof with this baseball bat. When the gorilla falls off, the pit bull is trained to grab his testicles and not let go. The gorilla will then be subdued enough for me to put him in the cage in the back of the van." He hands the shotgun to the homeowner. "What's the shotgun for?" the homeowner inquires. "If the gorilla knocks me off the roof, shoot the dog." So a dog lover, whose dog was a female and in heat, agreed to look after her neighbor's male dog while the neighbors were on vacation. She had a large house and believed that she could keep the two dogs apart. However, as she was drifting off to sleep, she heard awful howling and moaning sounds, rushed downstairs and found the dogs locked together, in obvious pain and unable to disengage, as so frequently happens when dogs mate. Unable to separate them and perplexed as to what to do next. Although it was late, she called the vet, who answered in a very grumpy voice. Having explained the problem to him, the vet said, "Hang up the phone and place it down alongside the dogs. I will then call you back, and the noise of the ringing will make the male lose his excitement and he will be able to withdraw. Do you think that will work?" she asked. "It just worked for me," he replied. So a farmer finally decided to buy a TV. The store assured him that they would install the antenna and TV the next day. The next evening, the farmer turned on his new TV and found only political ads on every channel. The next morning, he turned the TV on and found only political ads again. When he came in to eat lunch, he tried the TV again, but still only found political ads. The next day, when he still found only political ads, he called the store to complain. The owner said that it was impossible for every channel to only have political ads, but agreed to send their repairman to check the TV. When the TV repairman turned on the TV, he found that the farmer was right. After looking at the TV for a while, he went outside to check the antenna. In a few minutes, he returned and told the farmer he had found the problem. The antenna had been installed on top of the windmill and grounded to the manure spreader. So 3 friends married women from different parts of the world. The first man married a Greek girl. He told her that she was to do the dishes and house cleaning. It took a couple of days, but on the 3rd day, he came home to see a clean house and dishes washed and put away. The second man married a Thai. He gave his wife orders that she was to do all the cleaning, dishes, and the cooking. The first day he didn't see any results, but the next day he saw it was better. By the 3rd day, he saw his house was clean, the dishes were done, and there was a huge dinner on the table. The 3rd man married an American girl. He ordered her to keep the house cleaned, dishes washed, laundry washed, and hot meals on the table for every meal. He said the first day he didn't see anything. The second day he didn't see anything either, but by the 3rd day, some of the swelling had gone down and he could see a little out of his left eye. So a sales rep, an admin clerk, and their manager are walking to lunch when they stumble upon an old, antique oil lamp. Curious, they give it a rub and poof, a genie bursts out in a cloud of smoke. The genie says, "I usually grant 3 wishes, so each of you gets just 1. The admin clerk jumps in excitedly. "Me first. I want to be in the Bahamas, cruising on a speedboat without a care in the world." Poof, she vanishes. The sales rep shouts, "Me next. I want to be in Hawaii, lying on a beach, sipping endless pina coladas with my personal masseuse and the love of my life." Poof, he disappears too. Now the genie turns to the manager. The manager pauses, then says, I want those two back in the office after lunch. Moral of the story: always let your boss have the first say. So a young boy asks his father, Dad, what is capitalism? His working-class father tells him, Here, take this $5 bill and go buy me a club sandwich, fries, and a large drink at that restaurant up the street. The son eagerly takes the bill and heads to the restaurant, which is up a very steep hill from their home. The restaurant worker takes the order and says to him, All right, that'll be $8.72. The boy replies, But I've only got $5. The worker sighs and says, Well, that's too bad. Piss off, then, I suppose. Downtrodden, the boy hangs his head and starts the march back home. He walks in the front door and tells his father, Dad, I put in all that effort, and the man just told me I didn't have enough money and should piss right off. His father looks him in the eye and says, There you go, son. That's capitalism. So a businessman traveling through rural England decided to stop the night at a picturesque country inn, the George and Dragon. Checking in at reception, he asked the lady co-owner whether meals were still being served at the bar. No, she replied forcefully. Last meals are 8 p.m. sharp. It is now 8:10 p.m. Not even a sandwich? He asked, sheepishly. No, not even a sandwich. The chef has packed up, and I'm certainly not going to start slaving away in the kitchen at this time of night just because you haven't thought things out very well. Very well, he said resignedly. Is there any chance of having breakfast in my room in the morning? Certainly not, she snapped. All breakfasts are served in the dining room at 7:30 a.m. prompt. Any more questions? Yes. Do you think I might have a word with George? So a guy stumbles through the front door of a bar and makes his way to the counter. He slaps a hand on the bar and orders a beer. The bartender takes one look at him and says, Sorry, sir, I can't serve you. You've already had too much to drink. The drunk grumbles, swears under his breath, and staggers back out the door. 5 minutes later, he comes crashing through the side door of the same bar, waving his arms and shouting for a beer. The bartender shakes his head and says again, Sir, I told you already, I can't serve you. You've had enough. 10 minutes after that, the man comes barreling in through the back door, wobbling up to the bar, and demands another drink. The bartender sighs. Look, sir, I'm sorry, but you really need to leave. You've had far too much tonight. The drunk stares at him for a moment, squints, and finally says, My God, man, how many bars do you work at? So Bob was a very keen angler, but he eventually found time to meet a lovely girl, and they were married. After the honeymoon, Bob was in his garage, sorting out reels when his new wife came in to watch him. After a long period of silence, she finally said, Darling, I've just been thinking now that we are married. Maybe you don't need to spend so much of your time out here in your garage, and you could think about selling some of your fishing stuff, like, do you need all those rods, lures, old, reel parts, and smelly nets? You could sell that tatty boat, and with the money we could have a new bathroom. A horrified look crept over Bob's face and silently stared at her. She said, Darling, what's wrong? He replied, Nothing, but for a minute there. You were starting to sound like my ex-wife. Ex-wife? She screamed. You never told me you were married before. Bob replied, I wasn't. So Gary is the geezer who got home late one night and Marilyn, his wife, says, Where the hell have you been? Gary replies, I was getting a tattoo. A tattoo? She frowned. What kind of tattoo did you get? I got a $100 note on my manhood, he said proudly. What the hell were you thinking? She said, shaking her head in disgust. Why on earth would a chartered accountant get a $100 note tattooed on his manhood? Well, 1, I like to watch my money grow. 2, once in a while, I like to play with my money. 3, I like how money feels in my hand. And, lastly, instead of you going out shopping, you can stay right here at home and blow $100 anytime you want. Gary is now in the critical care unit, room 233. No visitors until further notice. So, a homeless man digs through a filthy alley and finds a rusty old thermos. He pops it open, and poof, a genie emerges, looking a bit sheepish for being stuck in such a shabby container. The genie says that he can grant the man 3 wishes that are within his power. The man wishes for immortality, and the genie says it's beyond his power. So the man asks to be extremely wealthy. The genie says that's beyond his power too. So is being famous. The man scratches his head, pondering what this low-rent genie might actually manage, and said that he wants to live in a place with free rent, free food, and all the sex he could want for the rest of his life. The genie thinks about if for a moment and says, I can do that. There's a blinding flash, and the man suddenly wakes up in a cell, wearing an orange jumpsuit with a meaty hand resting on his shoulder. So a blonde walks by a travel agency and notices a sign in the window, Cruise Special, $99. She goes inside, lays her money on the counter and says, I'd like the $99 cruise special, please. The agent grabs her, drags her into the back room, ties her to a large inner tube, then drags her out the back door and downhill to the river, where he pushes her in and sends her floating. A second blonde comes by a few minutes later, sees the sign, goes inside, lays her money on the counter, and asks for the $99 special. She too is tied to an inner tube and sent floating down the river. Drifting into stronger current, she eventually catches up with the first blonde. They float side by side for a while before the first blonde asks, Do they serve refreshments on this cruise? The second blonde replies, They didn't last year. So after being married for 50 years, I took a careful look at my wife one day and said, 50 years ago, we had a cheap house, a junk car, slept on a sofa bed and watched a 10-inch black and white TV. But, hey, I gotta sleep every night with a hot 23-year-old girl. Now, I have a $750,000 home, a $45,000 car, a nice big bed and a large screen TV. But I'm sleeping with a 73-year-old woman. So I said to my wife, It seems to me that you're not holding up your side of things. My wife is a very reasonable woman. She told me to go out and find a hot 23-year-old girl, and she would make sure that I would once again be living in a cheap house, driving a junk car, sleeping on a sofa bed, and watching a 10-inch black and white TV. So a bus carrying ugly people crashes into a truck, and everyone inside the bus dies. They then get to meet their maker, and because of the grief they have experienced, he decides to grant them one wish each before they enter paradise. They're all lined up, and God asks the first one what the wish is. I want to be gorgeous. And so God snaps his fingers, and it is done. The second one in line hears this and says, I want to be gorgeous too. Another snap of his fingers, and the wish is granted. This goes on for a while, but when God is halfway down the line, the last guy in the line starts laughing. When there are only 10 people left, this guy is rolling on the floor, laughing his head off. Finally, God reaches this last guy and asks him what his wish will be. The guy eventually calms down and says, "Make them all ugly again." So a guy walks into a bar with his pet alligator. The bartender says, "Get that thing out of here. It's dangerous." The guy says this alligator is completely trained and docile. Bartender says, "I don't care. I don't trust it. Get that thing out of here." Guy puts the alligator up on a few bar stools. He puts his hand in the creature's mouth and says, "Look, it's completely safe." Bartender says, "Nope, get it out." The guy then pries the alligator's jaws open and puts his head inside. Bartender says, "Nope, I'm not convinced. Get it out." Guy unzips his fly and sticks his pecker inside the alligator's mouth. He then picks up a bottle of beer off the bar and starts bashing the alligator on the head. The guy says, "Look, it's perfectly safe. Does anyone else here want to give it a try?" A lady at the end of the bar says, "I will, but don't hit my head so hard." So, a man walks up to his buddy at the synagogue with an unusual request. "Hey, Dave, I need a massive favor from you as my best friend. I'm planning to sneak over to the rabbi's place and, well, spend some quality time with his wife. Could you please keep him occupied here for a couple of hours? You know, throw in some tricky questions, engage in deep conversations, share stories, just anything to make sure he stays put," he explains. Dave, feeling a bit awkward, reluctantly agrees and heads over to the rabbi. "Rabbi, I found myself in a bit of a pickle. My friend asked me to keep you here while he, spends some time with your wife at your house. Any advice?" Dave confesses. The rabbi calmly responds, "Go home, my friend. I'm not married." So a man was sprawled across 3 entire seats in a theater. When the usher came by and noticed this, he whispered to the man, "Sorry, sir, but you're only allowed 1 seat." The man didn't budge. The usher became impatient. "Sir," he said, "if you don't get up from there, I'm going to have to call the manager." Again, the man said nothing, which infuriated the usher. He turned and marched briskly back up the aisle in search of his manager. In a few moments, they returned and stood over the man. Together, the 2 of them tried repeatedly to move him, but with no success. Finally, they summoned the police. The cop surveyed the situation briefly. "All right, mate. What's your name?" the cop asked. "Sam," the man moaned. "Where are you from, Sam?" the cop asked. "The balcony," the man moaned. So Bill had always been a prankster. As each of his friends were married, Bill made sure some type of practical joke was played upon them. Now ready to be married himself, he was dreading the payback he knew was coming. Surprisingly, the ceremony went off without a hitch. No one stood up during the pause to offer a reason why this couple should not be married. His reception wasn't disrupted by streakers or smoke bombs, and the car the couple was to take on their honeymoon was in perfect working order. When the couple arrived at their hotel and entered the room, Bill even checked for cornflakes in the bed. A gag he had always loved. Nothing, it seemed, was amiss. Satisfied that he had come away unscathed, the couple fell into bed. Upon waking, the couple was ravenous, so Bill called down to room service and asked, "I'd like to order breakfast for 2. At that moment, a soft voice from under the bed said, "Make that 5. So a man is walking through the mall with his teenage son. The son is tossing a quarter up in the air and catching it between his teeth. On one such attempt, the boy fails to clamp down with his teeth and ends up getting the quarter lodged in his throat. As the boy begins to choke and wheeze, the father panics and starts yelling for help. Not too far from the action is a man sitting at a coffee shop reading a paper and drinking his coffee. When he hears the father's distressed cries, he patiently puts down his coffee, folds his paper, and then walks slowly over to the boy. He grabs him by the balls and squeezes the heck out of them. The boy coughs up the quarter, and the man catches it in his hand, then proceeds to walk away with it, sitting back down to his coffee. The amazed father runs over and says, "Thank you, sir. You saved my son's life. Are you a doctor?" "No," the man replies. "I work for the IRS." So an American, a Russian, and an Egyptian were traveling around the world in a balloon. Just like in Jules Verne's story, the Russian stuck his hand down through the clouds. "Ah, we must be over my homeland. How can you tell?" asked the American. "I can feel the cold air," said the Russian. A few days later, the Egyptian put his hand through the clouds. "Ah, now we're over my homeland." "How do you know that?" asked the Russian. "I can feel the heat of the desert," the Egyptian replied. Several days later, the American reached his hand down through the clouds. "Ah, we're right over New York." The Russian and the Egyptian stared at him in amazement. "How could you possibly know that?" they asked. The American pulled his hand back in, held it up, and said, "My watch is gone." So a man walked into his office with two black eyes. His co-workers were concerned and asked him what had happened. The man hesitated before finally confessing, "Well, it all started when I had to run some errands yesterday." He had just finished up at the grocery store and was feeling good about his efficient shopping when he noticed that the button on the fly of his pants had come loose. He tried to fix it himself, but his attempts only made it worse. Feeling embarrassed and not wanting to walk around with his pants undone, he thought of his neighbor across the hall, a married woman who was always willing to lend a hand. He went to her apartment and explained the situation. The woman was happy to help and invited him in. As she was sewing the button back on, they chatted and laughed. The man was starting to relax and forget about his embarrassing situation. But just as the woman was finishing up and leaning forward to cut the thread with her teeth, her husband walked in the door. So after his death, Albert Einstein found himself working as the doorkeeper at the pearly gates. One slow day, he had time to chat with the newcomers. To the first person who arrived, Einstein asked, "What's your IQ?" 190, the person replied. They spent hours discussing the theory of relativity, quantum physics, and the nature of the universe. The next person came along, and Einstein again asked, "What's your IQ?" 120, came the answer. Einstein smiled and said, "Ah, great. So, who's your favorite football team?" They chatted for a while about sports and coaching strategies. Finally, the last person arrived. Einstein asked, "And what's your IQ?" 70, the man said. Einstein grinned and said, "So what do you think about the new iPhone?" So Michael, a handsome man, walked into a sports bar around 9:58 p.m. He sat down next to this blonde at the bar and stared up at the TV as the 10 p.m. news came on. The news crew was covering a story of a man on a ledge of a large building preparing to jump. Michael says, "You know what? I bet he will," the blonde replied. "Well, I bet he won't." Michael placed $30 on the bar and said, "You're on." Just as the blonde placed her money on the bar, The guy did a swan dive off of the building, falling to his death. The blonde was very upset and handed her $30 to Michael, saying, "Fair's fair." "Here's your money," Michael replied. "I can't take your money. I saw this earlier on the 5 o'clock news and knew he would jump." The blonde replies, "I did too, but I didn't think he'd do it again." Michael took the money. So an old man calls his son and says, "Listen, your mother and I are getting a divorce. 45 years of misery is enough." "Dad, what are you talking about?" The son screams. "We can't stand the sight of each other any longer," he says. "I'm sick of her face, and I'm sick of talking about this. So call your sister and tell her," and he hangs up. Now, the son is worried. He calls his sister. She says, like hell they're getting divorced. She calls their father immediately. "You're not getting divorced. Don't do another thing. The two of us are flying home tomorrow to talk about this. Until then, don't call a lawyer. Don't file a paper. Do you hear me?" She hangs up the phone. The old man turns to his wife and says, "Okay, they're both coming for Christmas and paying their own airfares." So a man who had spent his whole life in the countryside visited a friend. He'd never seen a train or the tracks they run on. While standing in the middle of the railroad tracks, he heard a whistle but didn't know what it was. Predictably, he's hit and is thrown, ass over kettle, to the side of the tracks with some minor internal injuries, a few broken bones and some bruises. After weeks in the hospital recovering, he's at his friend's house attending a party. While in the kitchen, he suddenly hears the kettle whistling. He grabs a baseball bat from the nearby closet and proceeds to batter and bash the kettle into an unrecognizable lump of metal. His friend, hearing the ruckus, rushes into the kitchen, sees what has happened, and asks the hillbilly, "Why'd you ruin my good kettle?" He replied, "Man, you gotta kill these things when they're small." So a man calls the police, upset that his house has been broken into and his toilet used. The owner says that nothing has been stolen, and the police officer finds no signs of forced entry. "Why exactly did you call the police?" he asks. The owner takes the officer into the bathroom and shows him the toilet bowl. "What do you see?" he asks. "A turd," says the officer. "Exactly," says the owner. "I didn't do it, my wife didn't do it, and my mother-in-law didn't do it. So I want an investigation." "I'm sorry," says the officer, beginning to leave. "I can't initiate an investigation with just a turd to go on." The owner is furious and follows the police officer into the street, shouting, "What about the turd?" "Keep it for 7 days," responds the officer. "And if nobody claims it, the thing is yours." So twin sisters in a nursing home were turning 100 years old. The editor of the local newspaper told a photographer to go there and take pictures of the old twins. One twin was hard of hearing, but the other could hear well. When the photographer arrived, he asked the sisters to sit on the sofa. The deaf sister said to her twin, "What did he say?" "We need to sit on the sofa," the other replied. "Now, get a little closer together," said the photographer. Again, the deaf sister asked, "What did he say?" "He says to squeeze together a little." So they wiggled closer to each other. "Just hold on a bit longer. I need to focus the camera," said the photographer. Yet again, the deaf sister asked, "What did he say?" "He says he's going to focus." With a big grin, the deaf twin shouted, "Oh, Lord Jesus, both of us. Can I be first?" So, a beautiful young girl is about to undergo a minor operation. She's laid on a hospital trolley bed with nothing on, except a sheet over her. The nurse pushes the trolley down the corridor towards the operating theater, where she leaves the girl on the trolley outside while she goes in to check whether everything is ready. A young man wearing a white coat approaches, lifts the sheet up and starts examining her naked body. He puts the sheet back and then walks away and talks to another man in a white coat. The second man comes over, lifts the sheet and does the same examinations. When a third man does the same thing, but more closely, she grows impatient and says, "All these examinations are fine and appreciated, but when are you going to start the operation?" The man in the white coat shrugged his shoulders. "I have no idea. We're just painting the corridor." So a rich man comes home and immediately starts shouting at his wife, "I've been looking at our expenses and they are through the roof. What in the world are you spending so much money on? Things are going to have to change around here." Intrigued but not intimidated, his wife calmly inquired, "Oh, really? And what sort of changes do you have in mind?" The man huffed, puffing out his chest as he began to list his demands. "For starters, if you took the time to learn how to cook, we wouldn't need to employ a personal chef. And if you bothered to learn how to clean, we could save a fortune by not hiring a maid." His wife raised an eyebrow and coolly replied, "I see. Well, in that case, I suppose all we need to do is teach you how to satisfy a woman. Then we can finally let the gardener go as well." So on his birthday, an old man is wandering around the nursing home, grinning and saying to everyone, "Guess how old I am? Come on, guess." Someone says, "I don't know. 81? 82? He laughs and says, "Nope, I'm 95. He keeps going until he spots an old woman sitting alone in the hallway. He walks up and says, "Hey there, guess how old I am?" She looks at him, then calmly says, "All right, I can tell your exact age if you show me your nuts." The old guy agrees and she unzips his pants, reaches in, feels around for a moment, then says, I'd say you're about 95. The old man's eyes go wide. "Wow, that's exactly right. How'd you know?" She smiles and says, "I heard you tell that other guy." So, an Englishman, a Frenchman, and an Indian man meet innocently enough in the waiting room of the local maternity ward in the 1950s. While they are making small talk, a panicked nurse comes running and tells them that there has been a mix-up and now the hospital cannot track whose baby is whose. The men are obviously upset and outraged at this gross incompetence. The Englishman, ever the strategist, suggests that each go in and identify their child as it should be obvious. "To set an example, I will go in and come out with my correct child," says the Englishman. He soon walks out with what is clearly the Indian baby. The Indian asks, "What are you doing?" "That's clearly my kid." The Englishman exclaims, "Well, one of the other two babies is a French kid, and I will be damned if I walk out with it." So, a cowboy in Oklahoma got pulled over by a state trooper for speeding. The trooper started giving him a long lecture about slowing down, really throwing his weight around to make the cowboy squirm. As the trooper wrote the ticket, he kept swatting at flies buzzing around his head. The cowboy said, "Having trouble with circle flies, huh?" The trooper frowned. "Circle flies? Never heard of 'em." The cowboy grinned. They're real common on ranches. We call them circle flies because they're almost always found circling around a horse's ass. The trooper paused. Wait a minute, are you calling me a horse's ass? The cowboy replied, Oh no, sir. I'd never disrespect law enforcement like that. The trooper nodded, glad to hear it, and went back to writing. After a moment, the cowboy added, Still kinda hard to fool them flies, though. So there were two senior gentlemen who worked at a sewage treatment plant. They had been friends for many years and had worked together at the plant for over a decade. One day, while they were on their lunch break, one of the guys went off to grab some food while the other stayed behind. As the first guy was eating his sandwich, he noticed that his friend hadn't returned yet. He decided to go back to the plant to see what was taking him so long. When he arrived, he saw his friend standing above a vat of sewage with a long rake in his hand. "What are you doing?" he yelled, horrified at the sight. "My coat fell in," his buddy yelled back, pointing to the vat of sewage. The first guy was even more horrified. "You're not really gonna wear that again, are you?" he said worriedly. No. Gosh, no," said the old man reassuringly. "I have to get it back, though. My teeth are in the pocket." So, a CNN reporter was in Jerusalem covering stories near the Wailing Wall when she heard about an elderly Jewish man who had been coming there to pray twice a day, every day, for decades. Curious, she waited by the wall. After about an hour, she spotted him slowly walking up, placing his hands on the stones and praying. When he finished, she approached him. "Sir," she said, "I'm with CNN. How long have you been coming here to pray?" "About 40 years, he replied. "And what do you pray for?" "I pray for peace between Jews and Arabs. I pray for an end to hatred. I pray that our children can grow up together as friends." The reporter, impressed, asked, "And how do you feel after doing this for 40 years? He sighed, "Like I'm talking to a wall." So a lady walks into a fancy jewelry store. She browses around, spots a beautiful diamond bracelet, and walks over to inspect it. As she bends over to look more closely, she inadvertently breaks wind. Very embarrassed, she looks around nervously to see if anyone has noticed her little accident, and prays that a salesperson doesn't pop up right now. As she turns around, her worst nightmare materializes in the form of a salesman standing right behind her, cool as a cucumber, and displaying complete professionalism. The salesman greets the lady with, "Good day, madam. How may we help you today?" Very uncomfortably, but hoping that the salesman may not have been there at the time of her little accident, she asks, "Sir, what is the price of this lovely bracelet?" He answers, "Lady, if you farted just looking at it, you're going to crap when I tell you the price." So a group of 4-year-olds were trying very hard to become accustomed to school. The biggest hurdle they faced was that the teacher insisted on no baby talk. "You need to use big people words," she was always reminding them. "John, what did you do over the weekend?" the teacher asked. "I went to visit my Nana," replied the boy. "No, you went to visit your grandmother. Use big people words." She then asked Mitchell what he had done. "I took a ride on a choo-choo." "No, you took a ride on a train. You must remember to use big people words," she said. She then asked little Alex what he had done. "I read a book," he replied. "That's wonderful," the teacher said. "What book did you read?" Alex thought very hard about it, then puffed out his chest with great pride and said, "Winnie the Shit." So one day at primary school, the teacher said to the class of 5-year-olds, "I'll give 50 cents to the child who can tell me who was the most famous man who ever lived." An Irish lad put his hand up and said, "It's Bono." The teacher said, "Sorry, Patrick, that's not correct." Then a Scottish boy put up his hand and said, "It's Sean Connery." The teacher replied, "I'm sorry, Harry. That's not right either." Finally, a little Jewish girl raised her hand and said, "It was Jesus Christ." The teacher said, "That's absolutely right, Esther. Come up here and I'll give you your 50 cents. As the teacher was giving Esther her money, she said, "You know, Esther, you being Jewish, I was very surprised you said Jesus Christ." Esther replied, "I know, in my heart it's Moses, but business is business." So a husband was addicted to smoking and drinking. One day, his wife got so angry that she told him, "If you keep on smoking, all of your intestines will fall out." Her husband didn't believe her, so he kept on smoking and drinking just like he always did. His wife was determined to prove herself right, so one day she went out early in the morning to the local butcher shop and bought some big intestines. She stuffed them into her husband's underwear as he slept. A short while later, he woke up, let out a huge scream, and then fell silent for the next 30 minutes. After another 30 minutes of silence, he comes downstairs, sweating profusely. "What happened?" his wife asked. "You were right," the husband replied. "My intestines did come out, but don't worry, honey. After a lot of work, I finally managed to push them back in." So a hunter walks into a pub and says that he is the greatest hunter. He can recognize any game animal by its fur, and if they show him the wound, he can even tell which weapon killed it in exchange for a drink. They bring the first pelt, and with his eyes blindfolded, the hunter immediately says, "Bear, 30 caliber hunting rifle." They bring the next one, and the hunter quickly says, "Rabbit, shot with a shotgun." This goes on all night. The hunter wins lots of drinks, gets really drunk, but somehow staggers home to his wife. The next morning, he sees in the mirror that he has a huge black eye. He asks his wife, "Darling, I know I got drunk last night, but who beat me up?" And the wife answers, "At 3 in the morning you crawled into bed, put your hand in my panties, and said, 'This is a ferret, beaten to death with a shovel.'" So a man called his urologist in a panic. "Doc," he said, "I think my son has gonorrhea." The doctor sounded concerned. "That's serious." "How old is he?" 17, the man replied. "And the only woman he's been with is our maid." The doctor sighed. "All right, don't be too hard on him. He's still just a kid. Bring him in, and I'll take care of it." There was a pause. Then the man added, "Thing is, I've been sleeping with the maid too, and now I've got the same symptoms." The doctor cleared his throat. "Okay, then you come in with him. We'll treat you both." The man hesitated again. "Yeah, about that, I think my wife might have it too." There was a long silence on the line. Then the doctor suddenly shouted, "Oh crap, that means we've all got it." So Mom and the kids had been up in the attic together doing some cleaning. The kids uncovered an old manual typewriter and asked her, "Hey, Mom, what's this?" "Oh, that's an old typewriter," she answered, thinking that would satisfy their curiosity. "Well, what does it do?" they asked. "I'll show you," she said, and returned with a blank piece of paper. She rolled the paper into the typewriter and began striking the keys. leaving black letters of print on the page. "Wow," they exclaimed. "That's really cool. But how does it work like that?" "Where do you plug it in?" "There is no plug," she answered. "It doesn't need a plug." "Then where do you put the batteries?" They persisted. "It doesn't need batteries either," she continued. "Wow, this is so cool," they exclaimed. "Someone should have invented this a long time ago." So a government employee sat in his office and, out of boredom, decided to see what was inside his old filing cabinet. He poked through the contents and came across an old brass lamp he's never seen before. "This will look good on my mantle," he said, and took it home with him. While polishing the lamp, a genie suddenly appeared. "Noble sir," he thundered, "you have 3 wishes you may ask of me." "All right," said the government clerk. "I would like an ice-cold Coke right now." He gets his Coke and drinks it. Now that he can think more clearly, he states his second wish. "I wish to be on an island with beautiful women who find me irresistible." Suddenly, he's on an island with gorgeous women eyeing him lustfully. He tells the genie his third and last wish. "I wish I'd never have to work again." Instantly, he was back in his government office. So a man checked into a hotel. There was a computer in his room, so he decided to send a mail to his wife. He accidentally typed the wrong email address, and without realizing, he sent the mail to a widow who had just returned from her husband's funeral. The widow decided to check her mail, expecting condolence messages from relatives and friends. After reading the first message, she fainted. The son rushed into the room, found his mother on the floor, and saw the computer screen which read, "To my loving wife, I know you are surprised to hear from me. They have computers here, and we are allowed to send mails to loved ones. I've just checked in. How are you and the kids? The place is really nice, but I am lonely here. I have made necessary arrangement for your arrival tomorrow. Expecting you, darling. I can't wait to see you. Sure is hot here." So a man walks into a toy store to buy a Barbie doll for his daughter. He approaches the assistant and asks, "How much is Barbie?" The assistant replies, "Well, we have Barbie goes to the gym for $19.95. Barbie goes to the ball for $19.95. Barbie goes shopping for $19.95. Barbie goes to the beach for $19.95. Barbie goes nightclubbing for $19.95. And divorced Barbie for $265. The man is puzzled. Wait, why is divorced Barbie $265 when all the others are only $19.95? The assistant smiles and says, "Oh, that's because divorced Barbie comes with Ken's house, Ken's car, Ken's boat, and Ken's furniture." So there were 2 good old boys from Alabama who loved to fish, and they wanted to do some ice fishing. They'd heard about it up in Canada, so they took off up there. The lake was frozen nicely. They stopped just before they got to the lake at a little bait shop and got all their tackle. One of them said, "We're gonna need an ice pick." So they got that, and they took off. In about 2 hours, one of them was back at the shop and said, "We're gonna need another dozen ice picks." Well, the fellow in the shop wanted to ask some questions, but he didn't. He sold him the picks, and the old boy left. In about an hour, he was back and said, "We're gonna need all the ice picks you've got." The bait man couldn't stand it any longer. "By the way," he asked, "how are you fellows doing?" "Not very well at all," he said. "We ain't even got the boat in the water yet." So a lone Mongol warrior stands on top of a mountain and shouts down to the Chinese army below. "Send your men. I'm alone." The Chinese general sends 1,000 soldiers up the mountain. There's the sound of swords clashing, men screaming, then silence. No one returns. The Mongol appears again and yells, "Send more. I am still alone." Another 1,000 soldiers go up. More chaos, more noise, then silence again. The Mongol shouts a third time, "Come on! I'm still alone." This time, furious, the general sends 2,000 of his best men. The mountain erupts in the sounds of a huge battle. Finally, it goes quiet. A single wounded Chinese soldier crawls back down and whispers, "He lied. There were 2 of them." So a blonde hurries into the emergency room late one night with the tip of her index finger shot off. "How did this happen?" The emergency room doctor asked her. "Well, I was trying to shoot myself," the blonde replied. "What?" sputtered the doctor. "You try to shoot yourself by shooting your finger off." "No, silly," the blonde said. "First, I put the gun to my chest, and I thought, I just paid $6,000 for these breast implants. I'm not shooting myself in the chest." "And then?" asked the doctor. "Then I put the gun in my mouth, and I thought, I just paid $3,000 to get my teeth straightened. I'm not shooting myself in the mouth." "And then?" "Then I put the gun to my ear, and I thought, this is going to make a loud noise. So I put my finger in the other ear before I pulled the trigger." So unexpectedly, an artist's girlfriend started insisting on sleeping with him every day. Though quite unusual, he didn't question his luck, deciding to just enjoy the ride. One day, his girlfriend approached him saying, "Honey, can you sketch a picture for me?" "Of course," he replied. "What should I draw?" "What you think our baby will look like." He stared back at her, eyes wide. Then, sighing heavily, he grabbed a pencil and pad, quickly sketched out a picture, and pushed it toward her. "What the hell is this?" She laughed, surveying the page. It was just a stick figure, firing a gun at another stick figure, smiling, with no wounds showing on his stick body. "I asked you to imagine what our baby would look like," she repeated. "And I got a vasectomy 5 years ago," he said, so I drew a blank. So a rookie police officer was assigned to ride in a cruiser with an experienced partner. A call came over the car's radio, telling them to disperse some people who were loitering. The officers drove to the street and observed a small crowd standing on a corner. The rookie rolled down his window and said, "Let's get off the corner." No one moved, so he resorted to the loudspeaker. "Let's get off the corner." It boomed. Still, no one seemed to take any notice. "All right, folks. If you don't move after I count to 3, I'm breaking out my baton," the rookie cried. Intimidated, the group of people began to leave in a hurry, casting puzzled glances in his direction. Proud of his first official act, the young policeman turned to his partner and asked, "Well, how did I do?" "Pretty good," replied the veteran, "especially since this is a bus stop." So a man is sitting in the bar at a busy airport. A beautiful woman walks in and sits down next to him, he presumes, because she's got a uniform on. So he decides to have a go at picking her up by identifying the airline she flies for, thereby impressing her greatly. He leans across to her and says the Delta airline motto, "We love to fly and it shows." The woman looks at him blankly. He sits back and thinks up another. He leans forward again and delivers the Air France motto, winning the hearts of the world. Again, she just stares at him with a slightly puzzled look on her face. Undeterred, he tries again, this time saying the Malaysian Airlines motto, going beyond expectations. The woman looks at him warily and says, "What the heck do you want, moron?" "Ah," he says, sitting back with a smile on his face. "American Airlines." So a guy wants to get married, so his parents introduce him to 3 women. He goes on a couple of dates with each one, and later his buddy asks, "So, how did it go?" He says, "They were all great, but I tried something different. I gave each of them $5,000 and told them, 'Surprise me when we meet next week.'" His buddy raises an eyebrow. "Okay, weird, but what happened?" The guy says, "The first woman spent the money on clothes, makeup, and jewelry, and told me she wanted to look good for me. The second woman bought me a new watch and said, 'It's your money, but I wanted to give you something nice.' The third woman didn't buy anything. She opened an investment account and said it'll grow to help us in the future." His buddy leans in. "So, which one are you going to marry?" The guy grins and says, "The one with the big boobs." So an Alabama pastor said to his congregation, "Someone in this congregation has spread a rumor that I belong to the KKK. This is a horrible lie. I am embarrassed and do not intend to accept this. Now, I want the party who said this to stand and ask forgiveness from God." No one moved. The preacher continued, "Do you have the nerve to face me and admit this is a falsehood? Remember, you will be forgiven, and in your heart you will feel glory. Now, stand and confess your transgression." Again, all were quiet. Then, slowly, a young blonde woman stood up with her head bowed as she spoke. "Reverend, there has been a terrible misunderstanding. I never said you were a member of the Ku Klux Klan. I simply told a couple of my friends that you were a wizard under the sheets." So a blonde soldier was on sentry duty at the main gate. Her orders were clear. No car was to enter unless it had a special sticker on the windshield. A big army car approached with a general seated in the back. The sentry called out, "Halt! Who goes there?" The chauffeur, a corporal, replied, "General Wheeler." "I'm sorry, I can't let you through." "You need a sticker on the windshield," the sentry insisted. The general commanded, "Drive on." The sentry held her ground. "Hold it. You really can't come through. I have orders to shoot if you try driving in without a sticker." The general, losing patience, repeated, "I'm telling you, son, drive on." The sentry, looking increasingly confused, approached the rear window and asked, "General, I'm new at this. Do I shoot you or the driver?" So years ago, when I was a teenager, I had a summer job at a petrol station. Back in those days, it wasn't self-service, so my job was to put petrol in cars when a customer arrived. I always remember this one particular day when an old chap pulled in and said he wanted a fill-up. Then he got out of the car with a parasol, opened it, and followed me around as I worked, holding it over my head to keep the sun off me. Bit awkward, but it was a really hot day, so I thanked him as he paid and he drove away. About a week later, he came back for a fill-up. Again, he got out of the car with the parasol and opened it, but this time he just stood there watching me work in the baking heat. I asked, "So you're not going to use that to keep the sun off me this time?" He retorted, "Watch it, young man. Fuel me once, shade on you. Fuel me twice, shade on me." So, a woman's husband dies. He had $20,000 to his name. After everything is done at the funeral home and cemetery, she tells her closest friend that there is no money left. The friend says, "How can that be? You told me he had $20,000 a few days before he died. How could you be broke?" The widow says, "Well, the funeral cost me $6,500. And of course, I had to make the obligatory donation for the church and the organist and all. That was $500, and I spent another $500 for the wake, food, and drinks, you know. The rest went for the memorial stone." The friend says, $12,500 for the memorial stone? My stars, how big was it? The widow says, 3 carats. So a redneck wanted to learn how to skydive. He got an instructor and started lessons. The instructor told the redneck to jump out of the plane and pull his ripcord. The instructor then explained that he himself would jump out right behind him so that they would go down together. The redneck understood and was ready. The time came to have the redneck jump from the airplane. The instructor reminded the redneck that he would be right behind him. The redneck proceeded to jump from the plane, and after being in the air for a few seconds, pulled the ripcord. The instructor followed by jumping from the plane. The instructor pulled his ripcord, but the parachute did not open. The instructor, frantically trying to get his parachute open, darted past the redneck. The redneck, seeing this, yelled as he undid the straps to his parachute. "So you want a race, eh?" So a man found himself in court, facing a charge of indecent exposure. Standing before the judge, he looked nervous but determined to explain himself. "It was just a simple misunderstanding, Your Honor," he testified, adjusting his tie. The judge raised an eyebrow. "A misunderstanding? You're accused of indecent exposure. Explain yourself." The man cleared his throat. "Well, Your Honor, it happened at a bar. I was sitting there, minding my own business, when I struck up a conversation with this lovely young woman. We were having a good time, laughing, sharing a few drinks." "Go on," said the judge. "Then, during the conversation, she asked me what I wanted most in a woman." The judge leaned forward, clearly intrigued. "And?" The man shrugged and said, "So I showed her." So, 2 hillbillies walk into a restaurant. While having a bite to eat, they talk about their moonshine operation. Suddenly, a woman eating a sandwich at a nearby table begins to cough. After a minute or so, it becomes clear that she is in real distress. One of the hillbillies looks at her and says, "Can you swallow?" The woman shakes her head no. Then he asks, "Can you breathe?" The woman, starting to turn blue, shakes her head no. The hillbilly walks over to the woman, lifts up her dress, pulls down her underwear, and quickly licks her right butt cheek with his tongue. The woman is so shocked that she has a violent spasm and the obstruction flies out of her mouth. As she begins to breathe again, the hillbilly walks slowly back to his table. His partner says, "You know, I'd heard of that Heimlich maneuver, but I ain't never seen it done." So, a guy is stranded on a deserted island with just a pig and a dog for company. After weeks of isolation, he starts getting, well, a little lonely. He looks at the pig and thinks about it, but every time he tries to make a move, the dog growls and bites his ass, keeping him in check. One day, as he's sitting on the beach, he sees the most stunning woman struggling in the ocean, about to drown. Without hesitation, he dives in, rescues her, and brings her safely to shore. The woman, her clothes in tatters and her wet hair gleaming in the sunlight, looks up at him with gratitude. "You saved my life." I'll do anything to repay you. The guy's eyes light up. Anything? He asks. She nods eagerly. Anything. He pauses, then says, Great. Can you take my dog for a walk? So a young Native American woman went to a doctor for her first ever physical exam. After checking all of her vitals and running the usual tests, the doctor said, Well, Running Doe, you are in fine health. I could find no problems. I did notice one anomaly, however. Oh, what is that, doctor? Well, you have no nipples. None of the people in my tribe have nipples, she replied. That is amazing, said the doctor. I'd like to write this up for the South Carolina Journal of Medicine if you don't mind. She said, Okay. First of all, asked the doctor, how many people are in your tribe? She answered, approximately 500. And what is the name of your tribe? Asked the doctor. Running Doe replied, We're called the Indian Nippleless 500. So an Israeli soldier had just enlisted when he asked his commanding officer for a 3-day pass. The commanding officer looked at him and said, Are you crazy? You just joined the army, and you're already asking for time off. You'd have to do something spectacular for that kind of recognition. The very next day, the soldier returned, driving an Arab tank. The commanding officer was stunned and immediately granted him the 3-day pass. Another new recruit pulled the soldier aside and asked, How on earth did you manage to capture an Arab tank all by yourself? The soldier grinned and said, It was easy. I hopped into one of our tanks and drove toward the border. When I spotted an Arab tank, I raised a white flag. The Arab soldier raised his white flag too. Then I shouted, Hey, how'd you like a 3-day pass? So we swapped tanks. So Bubba applied for an engineering position at IBM in Raleigh. A Yankee applied for the same job. Both applicants had the same qualifications, and at the completion of a skills test, both men had only missed one of the questions. The manager went to Bubba and said, Thank you for your interest, but we've decided to give the Yankee the job. Bubba asked, And why are you giving him the job? We both got 9 questions correct. This being North Carolina, and me being a Southern boy, I should get the job. The manager said, We have made our decision not on the correct answers, but rather on the one question that you both missed. Bubba then asked, And just how would one incorrect answer be better than the other? The manager replied, Bubba, it's like this. On question 4, the Yankee put down, I don't know. You put down, neither do I. So a guy stuck his head into a barber shop and asked, How long before I can get a haircut? The barber looked around the shop and said, About 2 hours. The guy left. A few days later, the same guy stuck his head in the door and asked, How long before I can get a haircut? The barber looked around at the shop full of customers and said, About 3 hours. The guy left. A week later, the same guy stuck his head in the shop and asked, How long before I can get a haircut? The barber looked around the shop and said, About an hour and a half. The guy left. The barber looked over at a friend in the shop and said, Hey, Bill, follow that guy and see where he goes. He keeps asking how long he has to wait for a haircut, but then doesn't come back. A little while later, Bill returned to the shop, laughing hysterically. The barber asked, Bill, where did he go when he left here? Bill looked up, tears in his eyes, and said, Your house. So a family, father, mother, and child, visited the beach on a hot summer day, only to find a black flag warning against swimming. The boy begged to enter the water, but his mother insisted they stay on the sand to relax and play. Growing restless, the father told his wife, "Watch the boy. I'm going in. There's no way it's that dangerous." Soon after, the boy asked, "Mom, why did you let Dad go in but not me?" She replied, "Because you and Dad are different, and there are things he can do that you can't." "Is it because Dad swims well?" the boy asked. "Not really," she said. "Is it because he's big and strong?" "No." Frustrated, the boy whined, "Then why can Dad go in and I can't?" The mother smiled and said, "Because Dad has life insurance." So a pregnant woman is hit by a car. She is sent into a coma for 1 year. She wakes up, no longer pregnant, screaming, "Doctor, doctor, where is my baby?" The doctor replies, "Calm down, your babies are fine. You had twins, a girl and a boy. We gave them to your brother to watch while you were in the hospital." She says, "My brother? That guy is a moron. Why would you do that?" "I am sorry, miss. We had no choice. There was nobody else. He even took the liberty of naming them." "What?" she says. "What did he name my daughter?" "He named her Denise," says the doctor. "Oh, well, that's not so bad. What did he name my son?" To which the doctor replies, "He named him Denafew." So, 2 police officers saw an old woman staggering down the street. Stopping her, they can tell she has had far too much to drink, and instead of taking her to jail, they decide to just drive her home. They loaded her into the police cruiser. One of the officers gets in the back with the drunk woman. As they drove through the streets, they kept asking the old woman where she lived. All the old lady would say as she stroked the officer's arm is, "You're passionate." They drove a while longer and asked again, but again the same response as she stroked his arm, "You're passionate." The officers were getting a little upset, so they stopped the car and said to the woman, "Look, we have driven around this city for 2 hours and you still haven't told us where you live." She replied, "I keep trying to tell you. You're passionate." So a blonde woman was traveling on a plane bound for Los Angeles. She had been assigned a coach seat, but feeling restless and cramped, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She confidently walked up the aisle and plopped down into an empty first-class seat. It didn't take long for an attendant to notice this bold move. With a polite but firm tone, the attendant approached her. "Miss, you'll need to return to your seat in coach." The blonde, however, was not in the mood to comply. With a defiant shake of her head, she declared, "No, I am staying right here." The attendant, seeing no resolution in sight, called over the security guard. The blonde repeated her stance, refusing to budge. The situation escalated, leading to the involvement of the pilot. When the pilot arrived, he offered a knowing smile. "My wife is a blonde. Let me handle this." He leaned in close to the blonde, whispering something into her ear. To everyone's surprise, she stood up, gathered her belongings, and without a word, returned to her coach seat. Curiosity piqued, the attendant later approached the pilot, asking, "What did you say to her?" The pilot chuckled before revealing his clever ruse. "I told her first class was going to Toronto." So there are 3 guys sitting in a train compartment minding their own business when this stunning young woman walks in. The girl, without missing a beat, looks at the men and says, "Tell you what, fellas, if each of you gives me $1, I'll show you my legs." Now, these guys, completely enchanted by her, don't even hesitate. Each one pulls out $1. She lifts her dress a little, just enough to show off her legs. The guys are leaning in, hooked. Then she goes, "All right, if you each give me $10, I'll show you my thighs." Well, these guys are not about to pass that up. Out come the tens. She pulls her dress up higher, showing her thighs, and now the room's getting a little warmer. The guys are all loosening their ties, coats off, getting cozy. Then, with perfect timing, she hits them with this. "For $100, I'll show you where I had my appendix removed." Now, these guys are practically sweating at this point. They're pulling out their wallets so fast, they almost throw the money at her. So, she takes the cash, turns to the window, points outside, and says, "See that hospital over there? That's where I had it done." So, a man went to a strip club. When he got inside, he noticed a seat conspicuously unoccupied in the front row. Seizing the opportunity, he took the seat. As soon as the first dancer walked out, the guy directly behind him yelled, "Yeah, baby!" "That's what I've been waiting for." The man in the front row turned around and gave him a dirty look. A few minutes into the show, the dancer did a move and snatched off her top, revealing 2 pasties. The guy behind our friend goes off again. "Yeah, baby. Shake those things." Our friend turned around and said, "Hey, buddy, calm down." After a few moments, the dancer did another move and snatched off her dress, revealing a very thin G-string. Again, the man behind our friend yelled out, "Oh, baby, you're almost there." Our friend again turned around and said, "Hey, buddy, shut the hell up, will ya?" A few minutes later, the dancer stretched out on the floor and snatched off both the pasties and the G-string, and the whole club went wild, except for the man behind our friend. Curious, our friend turned around and asked, "Say, buddy, where's your enthusiasm now?" The guy responded, "It's all over your back, dude." So Mother Teresa passed away and went to heaven, where God greeted her at the pearly gates. "Are you hungry, Mother Teresa?" God asked. "I could eat," she replied. So God opened a can of tuna, grabbed a piece of rye bread, and they shared a simple meal. As they ate, Mother Teresa glanced down into hell and saw the souls there feasting on steaks, lobsters, pheasants, and decadent pastries. Curious, but ever faithful, she said nothing. The next day, God invited her to eat again. Once more, it was tuna and rye bread. And once again, she could see the people in hell enjoying lamb, turkey, venison, and lavish desserts. Still, she held her tongue. But on the third day, when yet another can of tuna was opened, she couldn't help herself. "God," she began gently, "I'm grateful to be in heaven, rewarded for my life of devotion. But here we eat tuna and rye bread, while those down in the other place feast like royalty. I don't understand." God let out a sigh and said, "Let's be honest, Teresa. With just the 2 of us up here, it doesn't really pay to cook." So a man decided to ride his 10-speed bike from Phoenix to Flagstaff. However, by the time he reached Black Canyon City, the mountains became too steep, and he couldn't go any further. He stuck his thumb out for a ride, but after 3 hours, no one stopped. Finally, a guy in a Corvette pulled over and offered him a lift. Of course, the bike wouldn't fit in the car. Thinking quickly, the Corvette driver found a piece of rope by the road. He tied one end to his bumper and the other to the man's bike. "If I'm going too fast, just honk your bike horn and I'll slow down." For the first 30 miles, everything went smoothly. Then, another Corvette zoomed by them. Not wanting to be outdone, the driver floored it and the chase was on. Soon, Both corvettes were flying down the highway, going over 120 miles an hour when they passed a speed trap. The officer clocked their speed, radioed his partner, and said, "You've got 2 corvettes heading your way, both over 120. He paused, then added, "And you're not gonna believe this, but there's a guy on a 10-speed bike behind them, honking to pass." So Paddy is stumbling through the woods, totally drunk, when he comes upon a preacher baptizing people in the river. He proceeds into the water, subsequently bumping into the preacher. The preacher turns around and is almost overcome by the smell of alcohol, whereupon he asks him, "Are you ready to find Jesus?" Paddy shouts, "Yes, I am." So the preacher grabs him and dunks him in the water. He pulls him back and asks, "Brother, have you found Jesus?" Paddy replies, "No, I haven't found Jesus." Preacher, shocked at the answer, dunks him again, but for a little longer. He again pulls him out of the water and asks, "Have you found Jesus, my brother?" Paddy answers, "No, I haven't found Jesus." By this time, the preacher is at his wit's end and dunks the drunk Paddy again, but this time holds him down for about 30 seconds, and when he begins kicking his arms and legs about, he pulls him up. The preacher again asks him, "For the love of God, have you found Jesus?" Paddy staggers upright, wipes his eyes, coughs up a bit of water, catches his breath, and says to the preacher, "Are you sure this is where he fell in?" So a Scotsman is sitting in a bar in Cuba, minding his own business, when a man with a large black beard walks in. The man orders a shot of whiskey. The bartender serves him. The man downs the drink and starts heading for the door. The bartender calls out, "Hey, are you going to pay for that?" The man replies, "Excuse me, Castro's army." The bartender nods and says, "All right then," and the man leaves. A few minutes later, another man with a large black beard comes in, orders a shot of whiskey, drinks it, and heads for the door. Again, the bartender asks, "Hey, aren't you going to pay for that?" The man says, "Excuse me, Castro's army." The bartender nods. "All right then," and lets him go. The Scotsman, seeing this, gets an idea. He walks up to the bar, orders a shot of whiskey, drinks it, and starts to leave. The bartender shouts, "Hey, aren't you going to pay for that?" The Scotsman smirks and says, "Excuse me, Castro's army." The bartender looks him up and down and says, "Where's your big black beard?" The Scotsman thinks fast, lifts his kilt, and says, "Secret Service." So a bloke was invited by his co-worker to grab a few beers after work. The bloke apologized, explaining my wife would never go for it. She doesn't let me go drinking after work. The co-worker offered a suggestion. When you get home tonight, sneak into bed, slide under the sheets, and go down on her. Women love it, and trust me, she'll be so happy she won't even ask why you were late. The bloke thought it sounded like a good idea, so he agreed to give it a try. He went out, had a great time, and came home very late. Quietly, he snuck into the house, slipped into the bedroom, and slid under the covers without making a sound. He gently pulled down his wife's panties and went down on her like never before. She moaned and groaned in pleasure, just as the co-worker had promised. After a while, nature called, and he had to relieve himself. He tiptoed to the en-suite bathroom, but when he opened the door, he was shocked to find his wife sitting there. Startled, he blurted out, "How on earth did you get in here?" Holding a finger to her lips, she whispered, "Be quiet. My mother came for a visit." So, there's a guy who lives in Ohio. One morning, he hears a voice in his head. The voice says, "Quit your job. Sell your house, take all your money, and go to Las Vegas. He ignores the voice. Later in the day, he hears the voice again. Quit your job, sell your house, take all your money, and go to Las Vegas. Again, he ignores the voice. Soon he hears the voice every minute of the day. Quit your job, sell your house, take all your money, and go to Las Vegas. He can't take it anymore. He believes the voice. He quits his job, sells his house, takes all his money, and flies to Las Vegas. As soon as he steps off the plane, the voice says, "Go to Caesar's palace." He goes to Caesar's palace. The voice says, "Make your way to the roulette table." He goes to the roulette table. The voice says, "Put all your money on red 23. He puts all his money on red 23. The dealer spins the wheel. It comes up black 17. The voice says, "Shit." So, a distinguished young woman on a flight from Ireland asked the priest beside her, "Father, may I ask a favor?" "Of course, my child." "What may I do for you?" "Well, I bought an expensive woman's electronic hairdryer for my mother's birthday. It's unopened and well over the customs limits, and I'm afraid they'll confiscate it. Is there any way you could carry it through customs for me? Perhaps under your robes?" The priest replied, "I would love to help you, dear, but I must warn you, I will not lie. With your honest face, Father, no one will question you." When they reached customs, she let the priest go ahead of her. The official asked, "Father, do you have anything to declare?" "From the top of my head down to my waist, I have nothing to declare." The official found this answer strange and asked, "And what do you have to declare from your waist to the floor?" "I have a marvelous instrument designed to be used on a woman, but which, to date, is unused." Roaring with laughter, the official said, "Go ahead, Father. Next." So a Bible study group was discussing the possibility of their sudden death. The discussion leader said, "We all know we're going to die someday, but none of us knows exactly when. If we did, we'd probably do a better job preparing ourselves for that day." Everyone nodded in agreement. Then the leader asked, "What would you do if you knew you only had 4 weeks left before your death and the great judgment day?" One man said, "I'd go out into my community and share the gospel with those who haven't yet accepted the Lord." "Very good," said the leader, and the group agreed that would be a noble thing to do. A woman chimed in, "I'd dedicate my remaining time to serving God, my family, my church, and my fellow man with greater devotion." "Wonderful," the leader replied, and again the group agreed. Then a man in the back spoke up and said, "I'd go to my mother-in-law's house for the 4 weeks." Everyone looked puzzled. The leader asked, "Why your mother-in-law's house?" The man grinned and said, "Because that would be the longest 4 weeks of my life." So there's this Mexican maid named Maria who goes up to her boss and asks for a pay increase. The boss is a bit taken aback and asks, "Maria, why on earth do you think you deserve a raise?" Maria says, "Well, there are 3 reasons. First, I iron better than you." The boss, a bit taken aback, responds, "Who says you iron better than me?" Maria replies, "Your husband said so." The boss, slightly mollified but still skeptical, asks, "All right, what's your second reason?" Maria says, "I cook better than you." The boss, raising an eyebrow, says, "Nonsense." "Who told you that?" Maria answers, "Your husband did." By now, the boss is really curious. "Okay, what's the third reason?" Maria grins and says, I'm a better lover than you. The boss, fuming now, demands, did my husband say that too? Maria shakes her head and says, no, the gardener did. Without missing a beat, the boss replies, so how much do you want? So a brunette, redhead, and blonde went to a fitness spa for some fun and relaxation. After a stimulating, healthy lunch, all three decided to visit the ladies' room and found a strange-looking woman sitting at the entrance who said, "Welcome to the ladies' room. Be sure to check out our newest feature, a mirror which, if you look into it and say something truthful, you will be awarded with a wish. But be warned, for if you say something false, you will be sucked into the mirror to live in a void of nothingness for all eternity." The three women quickly entered, and upon finding the mirror, the brunette said, "I think I'm the most beautiful of us three." And in an instant she was surrounded by a pile of money. The redhead stepped up and said, "I think I'm the most talented of us three." And she suddenly found the keys to a brand new Lexus in her hands. Excited over the possibility of having a wish come true, the blonde looked into the mirror and said, "I think," and was promptly sucked into the mirror. So 6 retired men were playing poker at Bob's apartment when Jack loses $500 on a single hand, clutches his chest, and drops dead right at the table. Out of respect for their fallen friend, the other 5 continue playing, but now they're standing up. After a moment, Mike looks around the room and says, "All right, guys, someone's got to tell Jack's wife." "Who's it gonna be?" They draw straws, and Pete picks the short one. The group tells him, "Make sure you're discreet. Be gentle. No need to make a bad situation worse." Pete nods confidently and says, "Discreet? I'm the most discreet man you'll ever meet. Leave it to me." He heads over to Jack's house and knocks on the door. When Jack's wife answers, she asks what he wants. With a serious look, Pete says, "Your husband just lost $500 and he's too scared to come home." Without missing a beat, Jack's wife shouts, "Tell him to drop dead." Pete nods and says, "I'll go tell him." So a Catholic priest and a nun were taking a rare afternoon off and enjoying a round of golf. The priest stepped up to the first tee and took a mighty swing. He missed the ball entirely and said, "Shit, I missed." The good sister told him to watch his language. On his next swing, he missed again. "Shit, I missed. Father, I'm not going to play with you if you keep swearing," the nun said tartly. The priest promised to do better, and the round continued. On the 4th tee, he misses again. The usual comment followed. Sister is really mad now and says, "Father John, God is going to strike you dead if you keep swearing like that." On the next tee, Father John swings and misses again. "Shit, I missed." A terrible rumble is heard, and a gigantic bolt of lightning comes out of the sky and strikes Sister Marie dead in her tracks. And from the sky comes a booming voice. "Shit, I missed." So a doctor steps into the confessional and says, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." The priest asks, "Please share your sins with me, my child." The doctor confesses, "Father, I've been intimate with some of my patients. This guilt has been eating at me for a week. I can barely eat or sleep." The priest tells him, "To move forward, you must learn to forgive yourself." The doctor wonders, is that even possible? "I feel so ashamed." The priest reassures, "You're not the first doctor to sin in this way, nor will you be the last." The doctor sighs with relief. "Wow, thank you, Father. That really helps." As they step out of the confessional, the priest, feeling a bit ill, requests sorry to trouble you outside of your office. But could you check my throat? I've had a nasty cough. The doctor replies, I'd love to help, Father, but I'm a veterinarian. So, 3 men were hiking through a forest when they came upon a large, raging, violent river. Needing to get to the other side, the first man prayed, God, please give me the strength to cross the river. And poof, God gave him big arms and strong legs, and he was able to swim across in about 2 hours, having almost drowned twice. After witnessing that, the second man prayed, God, please give me strength and the tools to cross the river. Poof, God gave him a rowboat and strong arms and strong legs, and he was able to row across in about an hour after almost capsizing once. Seeing what happened to the first 2 men, the third man prayed, God, please give me the strength, the tools, and the intelligence to cross the rivers. Poof, and he was turned into a woman. She checked the map, hiked 100 yards upstream, and walked across the bridge. So a teacher asked her class, can anyone tell me when girls really start to grow up? Little Johnny's hand shot up instantly. When they start wearing bras. The teacher raised an eyebrow, clearly amused, but keeping her composure. All right, Johnny, then when do boys grow up? With a mischievous grin spreading across his face, Johnny answered, when they start taking them off.